Today I have a big video for you guys, since I will be going over the entire Season 2 of Wistoria. Now this arc is filled with some of the most insane art and storyline that I have ever read, so be sure to stay right to the end. Anyway, if you like Wistoria, then please consider subscribing to the channel, leaving a like, and doing all of that good stuff. With that out of the way, let's dive into it. We see some students being in total disbelief that Will got a perfect score in every subject. One explains that he isn't done yet, but that he hasn't missed one question, saying that not even Lihanna has managed to get full marks on everything. The other one says that then it is possible that the book learner is actually going to graduate. The guy to his right says that he has earned every writing and praxis credit. He means that they are talking about a no talent who's more hopeless than the worst student here. And he's about to advance to the tower, explaining that it has never happened before. But while they were talking, we could see Edward a bit away, listening in on their conversation and looking pretty suspicious. After that, it looks like we see Werkner giving Will full marks on his Magizoology written exam. Just then, Elisa comes by and congratulates him and explains that it's nice, saying that his little protege's dream is about to come true. Werkner starts to smile as he says her name, and that there are still more exams, and that they can't be sure until the end. Elisa then asks him where this infamous book learner is now. Werkner puts his hand towards the crystal and says that he is at his usual place, and with that, we see Will studying away like crazy while having Colette right by him. However, Will starts to literally look possessed by all the studying, so Colette asks him if he is okay. Will, while having no will left in his eyes, says that he isn't, but that it's fine, saying that tomorrow is the last day of the written exams. Colette then says that ever since they moved out of the all-student praxis, they have had to do that on top of final exams, explaining that they just beat the neighbors yesterday. Will starts to smile a bit as he says that, thanks to Lihanna and everyone, he was able to max out his praxis credit, and that they have all been so kind to him, so he can't let it go to waste. Colette tells him that it wasn't what she was getting at before she can finish her sentence. Rosty cuts her off and says that Will has a few spellwork credits. Will tells him that it's right, saying that he got 5 from Professor Edward's remedial class, and his last exam is worth up to 6. He only needs one more to get to the tower, but he can't relax just yet as he then goes back into his books. But just then, Rosty takes his hand towards Will's head and tells him that if he pushes himself too hard. However, he doesn't finish what he was saying, as instead he pulls out a few grey hairs and Colette screams at him and asks him what he thinks that he is doing. Rosty is confused and says that he is pulling out his grey hairs as he always does, asking Colette if she might want to do it. Colette is about to reveal that she, of course, wanted to do so before going back to her senses, as she says that she would never do that, and she looks to be blushing while drooling a bunch. Meanwhile, they are arguing that Will is just by her side being hurt. Just then, Colette comes to her senses once again and tells Will that he has been working too hard, telling him that he has been at it non-stop since the day he beat the Grand Duke, asking what has gotten into him. Will then puts his pen down and says that he thinks that there was a little boy in that expedition group, asking if they know who he is. It then looks like Rosty gets a bit sad or something before he starts to smile and tells him that he must be from the Finn tribe, the people of light. Rosty explains that they're dwarves. They can't use magic, but they've been collecting knowledge about the dungeon for generations, ever since the days of the Mage Queen. The tower hired them as guides to find paths through the dungeon. People say that it's impossible to reach the deeper floors without their help. Colette thinks that he sure knows a lot about them. Meanwhile, Will, in his head, thinks about what Rosty said. He thinks that there was a magic sword and that the surge of power is asking what that truly was. After that, we see that it has gotten dark, and we see Colette coming with some food as she says that he's still at it, thinking that he is really overdoing it. She then goes to Will and tells him that she brought him some dinner. She is then about to say something about Professor Werkner, but just then, she notices that Will is fast asleep, so she decides to put his jacket on his back. She then starts to blush before asking him if he is asleep. After that, Colette looks around them, and her eyes start to go wild as she looks at Will, who is still sleeping. She looks closely at his lips before she gets closer and closer, and is then about to most likely kiss him when, out of nowhere, Rosty is behind her and asks her what she is doing. Colette obviously freaks out and flies right back. She asks Rosty when he got here, saying that it wasn't what it looked like and that she just wanted to give him his cloak. Rosty, with a smug face, says that he sees, and that here, he thought that she was about to kiss him, apologizing for the misunderstanding. Colette looks embarrassed, before she then clenches her hand and says that she was really worried though, explaining that Will's falling apart, but he just keeps pushing himself even harder. He's always covered in cuts and bruises, saying that she hates the Magia Vander. Colette goes even further as she says that Albus Vina cast her spell on him and Will's been chasing after her ever since. Colette starts to stroke his hair while saying that she never does anything and that she just waits up there in her tower. Rosty is then silent as he just looks out the window and says that he agrees and that he feels the same way. After that, we go right to Albus, who looks troubled or tired, so Sarisa asks her what's the matter. Albus just tells her that it's nothing. Just then, someone approaches her and calls it a surprise, and that it's idleness incarnate. We see that it's Eleanor Leaf who says that the shut-in is actually making an appearance, asking what's next. A hail of ice spears maybe. Albus just tells her that she is always so confrontational, asking if she is still bitter about losing that magic duel. Eleanor says that it's because they were only allowed to use ice magic, and that if it weren't for that, she would have destroyed Albus. After that, someone else comes by and tells them that they should have known that it was the two making all the racket. We then see that it's Zeo Thorzius Reinbold. He tells them that this is his hallway and that they need to get lost. However, both of them at the same time tell him that he is the one who should leave, and Eleanor calls him a barbarian. Zeo just finds that funny, as he then tells them both to take a look in the mirror. After that, Albus asks them what the two of them are doing here. Zeo just asks if she really has to ask and says that they are most likely here for the same reason that she is, explaining that it's the Terminelia and that they have to get ready for that stupid ceremony. Saying that it's the end of the year and that barrier is just about done for, telling them that he can't wait to see how many useful prospects that will get this time around. After that, we see Edward sitting alone in his chair. He looks at a big pile of paper that says History and Origins of Magic, Final Exam. With that, we get to the next day, where we see a classroom filled with students. Some of them say that they can't believe that they have Edward for the last day of finals. Another one says that 3 straight periods with that snake, telling them to just kill him right now. Just then, Edward comes in through the door and tells them to be silent. He tells them that their final exam will begin shortly, but first, he will say a few words. He tells them that he will be asking them one question. Those who can answer it will receive a full 6 credits, explaining that he will not be taking any questions. He then starts to hand out the papers and tells them to show him what the 6 years at the academy have taught them. After that, he tells them to begin. However, as they open the document, the only question that is there is a question asking them what magic is, saying that based on their own magical affinity, explain using the following terms: Tello, Link, Manifest. We see Colette thinking that it is an essay question about what it takes to activate and use their magic. He is asking what their process is like when they perform magic. That's something they normally do subconsciously, but now they have to explain what it feels like. Some of the nobodies think that it will be hard to put into words, but they think that they can answer this. Wignall says that of course, any mage or elf would be able to work out a response eventually. However, after that, all of them combined think that. But as for anyone else, on a question like this, it's going to be tough, which we can clearly see as we see Will starting to freak out. He looks super worried and says that there is no use and that he can't answer it at all. Thinking that knowledge means nothing here, this isn't in any textbook. Why would anyone bother teaching it? It's a feeling, something that you are born with. A no talent like him simply isn't qualified to answer it. We then see despair filling his entire face as he thinks that this isn't just something that he can power through on his own. Wondering if this means that it's all over, saying that he can't go to the tower after all, even though he promised Elfie. But just as he says that, he thinks about Elfie. This makes him snap back to reality as he tells himself not to give up. After that, he dips his pen into the ink and starts to lock in. He thinks that to him, magic is an aspiration, a miracle that will always be out of reach, something beautiful yet cruel. Magic is what's waiting for you after all your hard work. He believes that as long as you never give up, you can even surpass magic, and he is a sword and not a wand. He then says something more, but it looks like we don't get to know what it is just yet, as we then change scenes and we see Werkner barging into Edward's office. He puts his hands on him and asks if he really calls this a test and how he could ask them this. Edward just asks him what he means. He continues and says that they all hope to climb the tower. He merely asked them about the most fundamental part of being a mage. 40% of them got it wrong, and he weeps for their futures. Werkner tells him that this isn't what he is talking about. He then screams right at Edward, telling him that he asked them that, knowing that there was one student who couldn't possibly answer it, saying that he is a teacher, and asking him how he could set him up to fail like that. Edward just looks at Werkner with dead eyes as he then throws him onto the floor, telling Werkner that he is the one setting him up to fail. He asks Werkner if he wants to send a boy who can't use magic to the tower, to the wand graveyard. Asking what that will accomplish, Edward starts to walk away, while asking if he wants to let them make Will their guinea pig, saying that it's so ridiculous it's not even funny, explaining that this world runs on magic, and that a sword can never become a wand, and telling Werkner that he is mad, both him and the headmistress, and telling Werkner that he is wrenching that impossible dream out of his grasp. That's the only bit of mercy that he can offer him. With that, we clearly see Will on the list of failed students. After that, we see him lying down on the floor, crying as he thinks that he isn't eligible to ascend the tower, and that he is 1 point short. After that, we see that Will has now moved a spot, as we can see him sitting on a bench all alone, while looking down at the ground. Just then, Rosty comes by and calls out to him. However, Will is just silent, so Rosty continues and tells Will that he has finished repairing his goggles and that they are back in their room now. But even then, there is no answer at all from Will. This makes Rosty look worried as he calls out to him. After that, Will is the one to speak up, as he explains that Professor Edward is so insanely unfair. He says that he knew that a no talent like him couldn't possibly answer that question. Will's voice starts to sound more and more mad as he explains that it isn't right to ask a question like that, as he says that we can also see a bunch of tears dropping down onto his hands. After that, Will screams out and is super mad. He then looks down at the ground, and with tears streaming down his face, he just apologizes to Elfie. However, just then, Rosty finally sits down on the bench right by him, and he starts to hug Will. He holds Will right by him, and says that he doubts anything he says right now will mean much, but that he will say it anyway, telling Will that he is here for him always, which is so wholesome. But just after that, Will completely lets it all out as he screams with all that he can, while Rosty still holds on to him. After that, we quickly cut to the others, as Colette asks if Lihanna found Will. Lihanna says that she didn't see him anywhere, and that Wignall's helping her look. Wignall then says that he's not in the dorm, at least saying that he suspects that he left campus. After that, Colette looks around and asks where Will really is. Just then, however, someone walks towards them. They say that a student realizes he'll never make it to the tower, gets depressed, runs away from school. That's not so unusual this time of year. We then see that it's of course none other than Julius who said that. He then gets an annoyed look as he says that they for real want to rope him into looking for the no talent, calling it such a pain. He continues and says that if he's pathetic enough to run away from his problems, then just let him. However, we then see the goat Wignall, who isn't letting that slide as he takes his wand right to Julius' face. Wignall looks serious as he tells Julius to take that back, and that he won't let him insult an elf friend. Julius comes back with a heater as he says that it looks like Wignall left the dungeon completely infatuated with him. He then taunts Wignall for a bit. This just makes Wignall so much angrier, but it then looks like Julius slaps away his wand. He then screams that in this academy, or scratch that as in this world, magic is everything. He explains that it doesn't matter how good he is in the dungeon. There's no place here for a sword. However, as he said that, we saw Sion looking at him with an annoyed look. This makes Julius pretty mad as he asks him why he is looking at him like that, saying that he thought that Sion hated no talent just as much as he did. Sion explains that he does not just hate, but he is furious, explaining that he was the one who was going to knock him off his high horse. However, now it's impossible, and he hates that more than anything, which I can't say is valid, but sure. Anyway, just then, we see Werkner, who comes by and asks them what they are doing here. Colette runs to him and tells him that they are looking for Will and that they can't find him anywhere. Werkner then starts to let out a small smile as he hears that they are so kind. However, he then goes to them and tells them not to worry and that he will find him instead. He tells them to just run along, as today it's the end of the year and the Terminelia after all. He looks up at the sky and tells them to go let loose and enjoy themselves. But just then, we can see a witch starts to speak out to everyone. She says that it's festival time, welcoming them to their New Year's Eve bash and asking how everyone is doing. She says that here they are again at Urbis Regarden, and that they are here for the grandest celebration and most important ritual of the year. She then tells everyone that she is their mistress of ceremonies, Claire, an elite high mage from the tower. She is 26 and still single. She continues and tells everyone there that it may be the end of the year, but it's all work and no play for her. Seeing all of them down there laughing and smiling with their families and lovers is enough to make a girl cry. She asks some work friends to join her, but they said that their students are more important. She then screams and asks if Werkner and Edward hear that, saying that back when they were schoolmates, the three of them were inseparable and that she will make them regret this. After that, she apologizes and says that she got a little carried away there. With that, she says that before she broadcasts any more of her shame to the entire world, let her bring this magnificent scene to life for them. She explains that today is the Terminelia, which means it's time to shore up the great barrier that protects their sky. She tells them that long ago their people were trapped in darkness with no knowledge of the sky. Many lands were laid waste by the celestial host, and bells tolled endlessly for all the dead. Then just when all seemed lost, their founder, Mercedes, called together 5 great mages to seal up the sky and repel the invaders. That was 500 years ago today. Ever since, Magia Vander's great barrier has stood as a boundary between them and the heavens, bringing peace to their world. After that, we quickly see Iris, who says that the barrier is effective for 1 year. At the end of each year, a new great barrier is cast. If they lose the barrier, the lore will come true, and that failure is not an option. After that, we see a new character, and he is called Rog Holland, and he is from the Fire Fraction. He tells someone that it's nothing to report on the ground, asking how things are in the air. Someone else says that there is nothing to report here either. No suspicious shadows or magical disruptions were detected. We then also see Iris again, who is also talking to the same person as she tells them that everything is normal and that they are clear to proceed, and calls them Sir Logwell. We then get to Logwell, who tells Lord Cariot that it's time. We see Cariot, who says that he knows and that they should let the barrier festivities begin. We then move back to Claire, who says that now everyone, please join her in a glorious welcome for the Magia Vander. And we then actually see all of the Magia Vander stepping out, which is so cool. And it's not only me who thinks that, as we see all of the citizens shouting out of happiness as well. Claire then continues as she says that she knows that some of them out there may be feeling disappointed or like there's no hope, but she now asks them to lift their gaze. We then also see Will, who does just that as he then also calls out to Elfie. Anyway, back to Claire, who tells them to never forget that the celestial host is seeking to conquer their world even as they speak. Their paradise is under threat at this very moment. And no matter how discouraged they may feel, they must hold up the sky and ward off evil, saying that now they should raise their lights on high and do their part to support the sky. We then see legit everyone taking up their wands toward the sky. We then move to the Magia Vanders, and Eren tells them to begin, which they sure do, as they use their grand spell circle, Vandes Terminelia. Everyone counts down together, and we then see the sky being restored, and with that, they scream, "Happy New Year!" Claire then tells them that out with the old year and in with the new, may Mercedes shine her light upon them all. However, right after that, something weird happens as a bunch of dark circles start to appear in the sky. We see Lodge panicking as he wonders what these magic circles are and where they came from, but he then looks back and looks super shocked. After that, we see a bunch of magical beasts coming out, and they are huge, and they then land right in the city, causing chaos right off the bat. We then see both Mars and Headless. Mars says that the Magia Vander used up most of their magic activating the Great Barrier and that they should be useless for a while. We then see Headless saying that it's time to start the party from hell, which to be fair, sounds super cold. After that we get to Will, who obviously sees this, but he questions what those magic circles are. He thinks that the gate circles sure look like the ones that they saw on the 11th floor, and he starts to wonder if it can really be the same. After that, we see the monster causing straight havoc throughout the city, and the citizens just try their best to run away. We see someone asking if these are Dinobors, someone else asks what deep dungeon monsters are doing above ground. After that, we move to Claire, who is still in the air. Anyway, she calls out to Raj that she will throw up some defenses, telling him to hurry up with that incantation. Raj thanks her, and he then tells his men to prepare to engage. We then see Claire, I'm guessing, using her ability, as she then manages to call forth a bunch of cool-looking monsters who are called Corridos Guardians, but I'm guessing that they are friendly. Then we head back to Raj, who tells them to begin the incantation. He tells them to let Claire's guardians handle things on the front lines. We then see him taking a deep breath as he has his wand out and ready. After that, he screams at them to kill them all of them. Then he fires off insane fire attacks right at them. We see Wignall and Sion, who is currently trying to save a bunch of hurt people. Wignall wonders how Claire was able to create so many guardians, and Sion thinks that they stamped out the surprise attack in about a second, and all of them realize, together with Lihanna, that this is what it takes to be a high mage from the tower. We then head back to Raj, who says that they would defy the very city the Magia Vander calls home, calling them fools. He continues as he tells them to trace the magic circles back to their source. That's where they will find whoever released all these monsters, telling them that he wants them seized at all costs. However, as the smoke clears, he can see that one monster seems to have survived their barrage, and Raj is having trouble believing it at first. He then decides to fire away an attack as he tells the monster to just go down quietly. However, he quickly realizes that none of his attacks seem to be working as the monster just keeps on closing the distance to him. Claire then screams at him to run, but sadly it's already too late, as we can see the monster cutting Raj through his body and killing him as well. He doesn't have a lower body part anymore. The monster then stamps their foot down and screams with all that they can. Meanwhile, Claire, still in the air, thinks that magic doesn't seem to be working against them. We then have a no-name who screams that they need to call for reinforcements, saying that they are still coming and that they are unable to stop them. While the nobodies are fighting for dear life, we head back to Claire once again, who wonders if they are immune to magic, but she then thinks that it's not it, as they are instead neutralizing their spells. Not only that, but she then realizes that they even wiped out her guardians, but while she is in her head, we can see that the monsters are heading for her. Now, this is a bit hard to see, but it looks like she is able to dodge the monster's attack as she sees the monster's sword, which she gets pretty intrigued about. Now I do think that she survived, as it sounds like she reported back to Cauldron that the monster was using a mage slayer. After that, a mage comes to Cauldron and tells her that they can't hold them back, explaining that the tower guards that went to the city have already suffered heavy losses. Some civilians have been hit as well, wondering what those things even are. We then head right into Cauldron's thoughts, as she thinks that Finn brought her that mage slayer. He and his team recovered it, but she wonders if it was mass-produced for this battle. She thinks that if they are using gates, they can assume these are the wanted criminals who appeared at the all-student praxis, but they can't possibly be working on their own, thinking that this is far too well organized. They attacked the moment the Terminelia ritual was over, and why would they time it like this? But it then looks like something clicks for her, but just then, someone screams to her, telling her that they need reinforcements from the school, but she screams and tells them no. But it doesn't take long before the monster have gone to breached into the school grounds. This makes her think that she knew it, and that the attack on the city was a diversion. She then tells the mages to defend the tower. After that, we get to a big round table with the Magia Vander, and someone says that they are the ones the enemy is after. Sarissa tells them that all of them exhausted most of their magic casting the Great Barrier. Eleanor tells her that the Terminelia is the one and only day of the year when the Magia Vander are all in a weakened state. She didn't know what idiots are behind this, but that must have been their goal. After that, we see Logwell. He tells Lord Cariot that the Magia Vander must join the battle, explaining that if not, innocent lives will be lost, and that the Magia Vander should turn their strength at once to the battle. However, he quickly gets cut off by Aaron, who tells him to be silent. He asks Logwell if he would like his windpipe torn out like his eyes were, telling him to remember his place and saying that he has already disgraced himself enough. We then get to Zio, who asks what they are supposed to do then, asking if they should just sit up here on their pedestal and watch. Aaron then tells him that he is exactly right, saying that he forbids any Magia Vander from leaving this place, telling them with a serious tone that if even one of them is lost and the Great Barrier is breached, the celestial host will come pouring through. Not only Regarden, but the entire world will be reduced to cinders. That is the one thing that they must avoid at all cost. We then see Mars, who explains that it looks like those Magia Vander are too scared to come out, saying that they are dangling the bait right in front of their faces. If they'd just shown some guts, they'd have finished them off already. Headless then tells him that they should just sit back and enjoy the view for now. Leaving them, we go to Iris, who thinks that this can't be. She looks super shocked as she thinks that the people, the city's greatest treasure, are the talent they need to fight the heavens, and that they can't let this happen. Suddenly, she hears someone calling for their mother behind her, and she looks back. She sees a monster heading right for them. The child starts to look sad, and Iris knows that she has to do something, so she fires off a blast right towards the monster. But it's pretty understandable it has zero effect. The monster keeps on going for the mom and the child, and Iris screams out, telling it to stop. But luckily, just at the last minute, we see its arm getting cut off, and we also see that this is catching Mars's attention. But after that, we see the goat Will, who is standing super ready and fired up. We then see the text, and I feel like it's Will's thought, but he wonders why this world is unkind, why it is so cruel to swords like him. He has asked himself that so many times. He would be lying if he said that he never felt bitter about it, but this was never what he wanted. With that, we see him screaming out as he then finishes the monster off. He lands on the ground, but we can clearly see how much his hands are shaking. He tells himself to get a hold of himself, and that every second that he stands here shaking, someone could be dying. After that, we see him locking in and going to take down more of these monsters. However, we then see Rosty, who comes and tells Will to take the ones with weapons. While he says that, however, a monster heads right to him. Luckily, he is well aware of it, and he then uses his crystal wreath magic to turn the monster into dust. Rosty then continues his thoughts as he tells Will that means the mages can still fight the ones that are unarmed. Will then tells him that he has got it, and he then goes right for the next one, which he manages to create an awesome clash with. However, as the monster and Will are going head to head, we then see that the monster manages to overpower Will, and Will is forced to jump back. We then get to Iris, who is watching this from a bit away. She thinks that Will is a warrior. If anyone can defeat the Mage Slayer, then it's him, but she very well knows that he can't do it alone and that there are far too many. But just then, someone calls her. We see that it's Aaron. Aaron tells her that he will grant her his authority, telling her to mobilize the dwarves and to end this carnage. Iris then gets up and thanks him. With that, she then uses some sort of ability and says that by the authority of the great mysterious Noah, the Watchers hereby invoke this special order. She explains that she lifts all bans on dwarven combat, and mages and dwarves work together and eliminate the monsters. She repeats that she invokes the special order Gordvir. After that we get to Werkner, who runs with all that he can into the tavern. He calls out to the dwarves and tells them to please help them and that they need them. We then see Donan, who says that the year's only just started and they have already got more work for them. Gina, however, tells him to quit bawling and move out, saying that they will go and help Will, and with that they begin to move out, and they look super cold. We then head to Edward, who uses his Dax Darbican magic on some monster. After that we can see him instructing some mages, telling them to let the dwarves handle the armed monster, while the mages focus on the ones without weapons. He then tells the student that they are putting them to work as well, as they need more fighters, explaining that even if all they can do is slow them down, just do it, instructing them to be the wands that protect their people. However, they are all a bunch of cowards as they wonder how they can get to work, and how they even killed high mages. But while they are just chickening around, we see someone using their ability, Owen, Seek, or Lisolde Dua. It's none other than Lehana, who comes and gets down a bunch of monsters at once, showing off her insane power. Or I got ahead of myself, as we then see that she didn't exactly take them down fully, as she looks annoyed and explains that even with an enchantment, it will take more than just one hit, as these are deep dungeon monsters after all. We then see the monsters going to attack her, but she jumps over them. However, she does think that what's worse is that any magic that gets within a certain range of those weapons just vanishes as she lands on the ground, and questions if they neutralize it, or if they are absorbing the energy, saying that either way, it's brutally effective against mages, thinking to herself that she wishes that there was just a way to overcome that. Just then, however, we can see Colette, who comes running to her and tells her not to do anything reckless as she goes to her. Lehana asks her if she can do something for her. Colette is just surprised, but we then hear her being super shocked but not knowing what Lehana told her just yet. We then get to Wignall, who uses his Alf's Ringhole spells. However, he explains that they are not effective and that they can even nullify his illusion magic, thinking that there's no way they are going to last until the dwarves get here, saying that Lehana is keeping them busy on the front lines, but they are done for if she wears herself out. He is about to say that if they don't run, then they are done for. But just then, Scion, who is to his right, speaks up and tells him no. He says that whenever they stamp out a spell, they slow down for a second. This means that if they just keep firing off spells, even if they don't work, then it will ultimately pin the enemy down, and that's exactly what we can see them do, as they just keep on firing more and more spells at them. After that, they say that it's working and that it's perfect, as now that the other monsters are forced to use the armed ones as shields, it's Colette's turn as they scream out to her to go. Colette, however, firstly looks super afraid before she decides to go for it and uses her magic, and she digs up the massive statue from the ground before she then puts it right on top of the monsters, crushing them fully. However, Julius, funnily enough, just says that she knocked down a statue of a former Magia Vander and that it's just asking for bad luck. But while he is off thinking about that, we see Wignall, who thinks that this is it. A physical object that isn't imbued with magic can't be neutralized. After that, we see Lehana, who screams out to all the earth mages to fire a barrage, telling them to use rocks, dirt, or just anything, explaining that they need to master the unknown, and showing them how they do things here at Regarden, and that makes them all super fired up. We then see Claire from the sky, who explains that it's not bad, thinking that this year's new graduates are something else, top-notch all around. After that, she furthered the information that Lehana said as she screams out to everyone, or mostly to the earth mages, as she tells them to lead the counterattack, and that the dwarves will be here soon. A no-name mage thinks that it makes him sick having to rely on the dwarves, but beggars can't be choosers, and that this is the Magia Vander's home, and that they are not about to let it fall. We then see Headless saying that Regarden's making a comeback. Mars adds that this is all because those idiots making the slime went and got themselves found by the expedition, continuing as he says that mysterious Noah and the Runt managed to get their hands on one of them and calling it a stupid mistake. We then get to Headless again, who says that they're bringing dwarves into it. Some of these mages think pretty fast, explaining that word's already gotten out about their trump card. Mars tells him to just imagine how this would have gone if the Upper Institute people had managed to study a slime and come up with a counter-strategy beforehand. They already had to roll out their plan before they could produce enough of them, as it is. If they hadn't been forced to show their hand, this would have been the perfect surprise attack. We then move to Headless, who says that, then again, that's not the only reason, and we see Will as he says that, which makes me worried. Anyway, Headless continues as he says that it's a little early, but whatever, and that they have one more surprise. With that, we go over to Will, who just took down one of the beasts. However, his eyes suddenly widen as he can feel a huge gate opening behind him. He looks at it and wonders if there's more and if something else is coming, and we then see a, to be fair, super cool but also huge monster appearing. It seems to have an eye in its head, and the eye looks around intensely before it finds Will before him. After that, in an instant, it basically teleports to Will and punches him. However, this is far from any normal attack, as Will is sent through 3 buildings before finally landing against a wall, but looking completely out of it. We then switch scenes as we see some weird guy getting a knife in his chest. We then see Finn walking right up to him. Finn tells him that it's time to stop playing tag. He tells the guy that he is the one who made the Mage Slayers, and because of that, he is going to tell Finn everything that he knows. The guy just starts to laugh maniacally as he tells him that he is too late, telling him that their job was to lure him deep into the dungeon. Up on the surface, they are already wreaking havoc, and we can see that it sure makes Finn a bit nervous. We then get back to the city, where we see Will, who actually manages to get back up. However, he is bleeding heavily and has a bunch of scars on him. On top of that, it's not like he can calm down, as just as he gets up on his feet, the beast is right on him, and he goes to attack and grabs his leg before dragging him through the entire building, before once again throwing him through a bunch of buildings. Will obviously takes a ton of damage because of it, but before he goes through yet another house, he manages to take out his sword and use it to get down to the ground. While he is now sitting down, he looks at the monster and wonders how it is so powerful, and that it doesn't even make sense. We'll then look closely at it and wonder if it could even be stronger than a Grand Duke. We head up to the skies again, where we see Claire alive and well. She looks at this and wonders if it's a Deander, the 40th floor notorious monster. She explains that he is infamous for slaughtering multiple Magia Vander. After that, we head back to Mars, who explains that 50 of their men got wiped out, just trying to shove that abomination through the gate. We then see Headless on his side, who says that they had a hell of a time trying to capture it alive. Mars then just starts to smile as he says that now it sure can run wild all it wants. With that, we head back to Will, who's getting pushed back. He thinks that even if he dodges the main attack, he still gets blown away like a piece of scrap paper, thinking that this isn't an enemy that he can face head-on. He looks super hurt as he thinks that all he can do now is run, but as he says that, he quickly sees Deander going to 2 other mages. They look at it super scared as they wonder what he even is. However, the Deander obviously doesn't answer them as it instead goes to try and completely crush them, but luckily, we see that before it could take them down. Will had made it just in time and was able to block the attack, but he sure was struggling. We see the other mages seeing him and questioning why he is here, and calling him a flunky, which is so wild as he just saved their lives. Anyway, Will, being the kind-hearted soul that he is, screams at them to run. With that, the 2 mages run for their lives while screaming. Meanwhile, Will isn't that lucky, as the Deander takes his other free hand and manages to give Will a super punch right to the body, making him pretty much fly away. But trust me, it only gets worse, as while Will is in the air, the Deander teleports to him and then pushes him right into the ground. Will hits it harder than ever and he throws up blood. Will is then in a super hurt state, almost being unable to move, as he can just look at the Deander, which is standing in front of him. But just then, we see the goat Donan, who screams Will's name and comes to his rescue. As before, Deander has put the nail in the coffin for Will. Donan came and pushed him away. Donan looks super cool as he asks Will if he is alright. Will is just super confused to see him here, but Donan tells Will to just stay right there and that they are going to chop this thing to pieces, and we then see a bunch of dwarfs around it. We then get to Iris, who screams out to everyone. She tells the fellow book learner to concentrate their forces in the southern district, defeating the Deander is their top priority, and launch an all-out attack as soon as the dwarves destroy its mage slayer. However, we then cut to Mars, who says that they got it surrounded. Meanwhile, Headless says that it's just like they planned, and calls it perfect. With that, it looks like the Deander is starting to transform, and Headless continues as they tell the Deander to eat up. Donan asks what is going on, and Will, who looks at this, thinks that it pushed its core out. After that, we cut to Edward, who has just defeated a monster. However, he thinks that it's a trap, and that they played right into their hands. He then screams out and tells them to gather all the traces now. However, Headless tells him that it's already way too late, and after that, we see that the Deander is absorbing the life force out of all the previously defeated beasts. We learn that the Deander has a unique skill. It can absorb traces from other monsters. Basically, it eats its friends to get crazy strong. We see Claire freaking out over this as she screams at them not to let it get any more traces. Meanwhile, Donan tells them to come on and charge at it. However, as all of the dwarves are going to it, suddenly, some weird, strange black lightning comes in their way. Donan falls then to the ground, and we see Mars just laughing as he tells them that they don't, and that they should just sit there and watch how a real monster is born. We then get to the Deander, who screams out, and we see its core growing and growing before finally it has reached what looks to be its full form, and this looks absolutely insane as he looks so much more furious. And it's not just for looks either, as he then starts to emanate spikes out of his back and sends them right at everyone around. Mars just laughs more and more as he screams that he loves it, explaining that their magic won't work here, and the dwarves' brute strength can't do a thing either. Will, who sees this, looks genuinely shocked as he wonders if all those other monsters were just pawns. They took advantage of Rigarden's counterattack to make their secret weapon stronger, which I hate to be that guy, but it sure is clever. Anyway, Headless then snaps his finger as he explains that the party, the ritual, the city, the altar, now everything is in place for them to kill the Magia Vander. We then get back to Will, who is now on his feet. He thinks that it's too strong and that nobody can fight it, not the mages and not the dwarves. He then thinks back to his previous spell combo with the sword and thinks that it might be the only thing that could work. Suddenly, Rosty comes and screams out to him, telling him to do the sword combo right now, and Will nods his head. Rosty then sends a spell right at Will, but before it can connect with his sword, we see Deander coming in front of it and stopping it. This leaves both Will and Rosty super shocked, but it's far from over as the Deander then goes right by Rosty, and he then straight up cuts off his arm, and we also see Kiki, who gets hurt a bit. But anyway, Rosty falls down to the ground and Will screams out to him with all that he has got. After that, he goes to battle with the Deander out of rage, but the Deander manages to kick Will away. They then start to fight on top of a rooftop, and it gets filled with explosions. While that goes on, we go back to Rosty, who tells Kiki to go and find Colette, telling Kiki that he will make sure that her master stays safe, and that he promises, telling her with a somewhat fake smile to go on. With that, Kiki runs away, and Rosty stands up as he thinks that he knows just what he has to do, and he looks super determined as he says that. We then head back to Will, who is going crazy against the Deander. He thinks that no amount of rage is going to win this fight, and no amount of calm, collected thinking will come up with an effective strategy. He thinks about all of his knowledge and wisdom, the sword skills he has mastered, and all of his worthless feelings. None of that means anything against cold, hard reality. After that, we see Deander getting in a strong hit and sending Will right into a wall. It sure looks like it hurt, as he then thinks that it all means that a no-talent like him can't really do anything. After that, Deander walks right towards Will, and he then takes his weapon back as he launches the finishing blow, but out of nowhere, we see Will being sent away to the sky. Will looks super confused before he sees what happened, as he sees Rosty standing where he was. Rosty has a smile on his face as he tries to tell him that he will always be there for him. However, he isn't able to get the words out as we see the Deanders piercing right through his body. Will looks completely stunned while they try to grab each other's hands, but when they are about to reach each other, Rosty's hand suddenly withers away into nothingness. This sends Will into a complete state of rage as he looks demonic and he screams out. However, even if he is super mad, he is still falling right towards the ground. Luckily, we see Werkner coming by on his dragon and managing to catch him in his arms. We see Werkner holding onto Will extremely tightly while he screams out for Rosty. Werkner tells him to stop it and that he is gone already, and with that, Werkner speeds away from the Deander. With that, we leave them for a bit as we head to the Magia Vander, and we see Zio slamming his hand into the table before getting up and starting to walk away. But just then, Cariot asks him where he thinks he is going. Zio tells him that it's to battle, of course, asking him if he can't hear them wailing. They are getting butchered like pigs down there, calling them all useless. But even then, he tells them to look at them just sitting here pretty watching them die. Asking if they are the Magia Vander or not, Cariot tells him that he heard Lord Aaron. If the Magia Vander falls, so does the barrier, and if that comes to pass, the celestial host will invade and reduce their world to cinders. As things stand, even they are no match for them. They must wait at least until their magic is replenished. He should know by now what being a Magia Vander entails, explaining that he has certainly told him often enough, telling him to kindly return to his seat. Zio, however, stands his ground and tells him that he doesn't want to, asking what good's a fancy title if it means being a coward. Just then, Cariot fires away a lightning strike right at his feet. He has a smile as he tells Zio that he already told him to return to his seat, telling him that if he refuses, then he will have no choice but to keep him here by force. Zio just laughs and tells him to go on and try it. We then see Eleanor's servant asking her what she will do. Eleanor tells her not to be ridiculous, explaining that she will stay here and observe. This is the mage's home, not hers. We then see Sarissa thinking that they're barely holding out as it is, and now the Magia Vander are fighting among themselves. However, she is about to be more shocked as Elfaria gets up from her seat and also starts to walk away. She then stands right before them and asks them to rescind their order and that they are wasting time. Aaron looks right at her as he tells her that his mind's made up and tells her to stand down. The two of them just look at each other before Elfaria gets angrier and she starts to use her ice ability around the entire table. She explains that she is going to help the people she cares about. She is going to help, so if they try to stop her, then she will take them down as well. We then see Sarissa on the side being pretty nervous about this, which was so wholesome. Anyway, we then get back to Werkner, who thinks that the Deander decimated their front lines and now the surviving Dinoboros are starting to overwhelm their mage reserves. Not even the dwarves can turn the tide. He looks right at Will and thinks that he is their last hope and that he is all that they have. But suddenly Will starts to speak up. He screams that he can't protect them. He can't save anyone. He can't do anything. He clenches his fist and says that it's just like before and that they even took Elfie away. He asks if it is because he can't use magic, saying that it is and that it's why he couldn't protect Elfie or Rosty or anyone. It's because he is a no-talent flunky, screaming with everything that he has got that it's all his fault. Werkner tries to tell him that it's okay, but Will just asks him why he is the only one who can't use magic, and he has a stream of tears running down his face as he says that, and we can clearly see how much that hit Werkner, but he then tells Will to pull himself together and screams out to him. But while they are going on about that, we can out of nowhere see Mars, who says hello to them. Mars explains that Will, he can tell just from looking at him, that he's going to be a huge pain in the ass, even more than the dwarves. However, he assures them not to worry, as he will kill them all at once. After that, we see him sending away a bunch of lightning right at them. It creates a big explosion in the sky, so Colette looks right at it. Lihanna, however, just asks her what she is going to do, but Colette wonders to herself if it was Will just now. Just then, Kiki comes running. She is super beat up, so Colette runs to her and asks if she is okay. She wonders if she is pouring blood, but notices that it's someone else's blood, but luckily not Will's. But even then, she can't help but wonder how Will is really doing. After that, she grabs Kiki and runs off, telling Kiki to follow Will's scent and to take her to him. We then see Sion right behind her, who follows her. Wignall asks him what he is doing. Sion tells them to take care of things here. Julius is also super caught off guard, but Wignall then tells him to conjure his clones. Julius is hesitant, but Lihanna tells him to hurry. Julius just gets mad as he tells them to stop treating him like their personal handyman. After that, we head to Headless, who thinks that Mars really knows how to party. He then starts to create something and tells it to go and join the fun, telling it to try the main dish. After that, Headless sends that black ball soaring through the sky, and Deander notices it and starts to follow it. Claire, who is also in the sky, sees this. She thinks that it's heading for the city center, or rather, the tower. She then thinks that she can't let it near the central floss, looking right at it and thinking that the monster could kill the Magia Vander, but suddenly, the Deander looks right at her and the black ball starts to surround her, and she starts to look worried before an explosion goes off right where she is. Edward, who is under, notices it and screams out for her. He then calls out to the dwarves. He tells them that he orders them to launch a suicide attack, telling them to go to the city center and destroy Devander's mage slayer, saying that they need to do whatever it takes. We then see Gina, who isn't listening to it, and says that he can't be serious. She explains that they have been shielding their mages this whole time. They are on their last legs here, not to mention that Donan's men got cut to pieces. And then on top of all that, Edward wants to send the rest of them to their death. Edward, with no hesitation, just tells her that she is spot on. Gina looks extremely caught off guard, but Edward explains that the only way to save this city and protect the children is for them all to give their lives. But while that is going on, we see a whole beast coming above Gina. It does look like Julius is the one who screams it out to her, but I'm not sure if that's true. Anyway, it's heading to Gina rapidly, but before it can hit her, Edward comes in its way and drags her away and protects her. Gina can't believe what just happened, but Edward has to act quickly, as he then uses his Saeva Fulminus spell on it and takes it out. We then see Edward breathing heavily as the beast got in a pretty decent blow. Meanwhile, Gina just asks him why. Edward then, in fact, looks super cold as he says that they are fighting against creatures that are impervious to magic. That means that his life isn't worth as much as hers right now. Telling her that it's that simple, Gina just gets more and more shocked. But Edward continues as he tells her that they will pay the blood price if they fall, so please make this sacrifice. Gina is hesitant, but after some thinking, she screams out to everyone and says that to get everyone together and that they are heading downtown. We then move to Sion, who calls out to Colette as he sees something and instructs her to run, which was true as we see the Deander standing right before her. After that, we move to the castle, where the text says that Edward's injured and they have lost contact with Werkner. Their forces in the Western District have collapsed, as has the High Mage Division in the Northeast. We then see Cauldron, who thinks that for herself. She explains that things could hardly get any worse. It's all they can do to protect their citizens. They can't drive back the enemy. After her, we move to Iris, who looks hurt, and she thinks that thanks to the Dwarves, they cut down the number of mage slayers, but that Deander is unstoppable. She hears a ton of people calling for reinforcements, and that they need help. As she hears that, she bites her lip, and thinks that they are losing the battle on every front. There are no more people to send. They have a few dwarves left, but without more help, the best they can hope for is an honorable defeat. At this rate, the tower will fall. Wondering what in the whole world they are supposed to do now, but suddenly she can hear people from the radio seeing a really strange guy. She then hears booms coming from them, and she wonders what is going on, so she screams for answers. However, she then hears a familiar voice, as it's none other than Finn, who asks her about the sword. Iris is first super confused, but Finn just aura farms while asking where the sword is right now. We then head back to Mars, who tells them that they are not bad. He is still in the sky, but tells Werkner and Will that he never thought that they would go for a kill in that state. He then grins as he says that, still, it looks like he took a chunk out of him too, and he calls it over. With that, we then see the dragon and Will on the floor. After a while, Will gets up and looks around as he wonders where they are. However, he then hears Werkner's voice, telling him that they are at the western city limits and that they crashed. We then see Werkner being super bloody as he tells Will that all he could do was keep him alive. However, I'm sad to say that this isn't even the worst part, as we then see Werkner with a huge hole in his body. Will looks like he is about to lose it as he calls out to Werkner. Werkner just stands before him with a smile as he apologizes and tells Will that he is their only hope now, telling him that no one else can but him and that Werkner knows for a fact that he can save the city. Will, who looks filled with despair, looks at the ground and tells Werkner that he can't do that. He continues as he explains that Rosty died because of him, and Werkner is also dying, asking how he is supposed to help the people he cares about if he always needs someone else to save him. Will looks extremely sad as he says that he can't change anything, asking how a sword could ever change the world, and how a no-talent like him can't do that. Will then starts to cry, and Werkner still just smiles at him. He then gets down on his knees and starts to hug Will. Werkner then tells him that he should know that he has been lying to him all this time. Will looks confused, but Werkner continues and tells Will that he can use magic, telling him that there's one spell that he can use, one spell that will give them all hope, which firstly is just insane. However, sadly, it then looks like Werkner's eyes go blank. Will notices it as well, and he starts to cry a ton, asking Werkner to wait. He tells him not to die yet, and that he has to tell Will what spell he can use, and this panel is truly so sad. Anyway, after that we see someone coming and telling Will, that's all? He needs a little willpower. It's Finn who explains that a silver light can cut through anything. Will looks back and remembers him as Finn from the dungeon. Finn then has a smile as he tells Will that Werkner will be fine, explaining that he will start breathing again as soon as his pulse picks up. After that, Will safely puts down Werkner's body. Finn then speaks up and says that they should talk about Will. Will is confused, but Finn asks him what he is doing just sitting there, asking Will if he can't see that the stage has been set. He continues as he says that Werkner said something about a silver light and a little willpower. Will asks him what he means, and that he doesn't understand. Finn just smiles at him and tells him that he heard the word spell, and thought it meant being able to control fire or wind or something. He then laughs and tells him that he already knows that it can't be right. Will just gets more confused by the second, but Finn tells him that what Werkner meant was the place where willpower lies. His feelings, you might call it. It's a kind of self-suggestion. You raise your voice in a shout to move yourself to action. It's like a great war cry that can transform lies into truth. Will, however, tells him that it's not real, it's just kid talk, and asks how that's supposed to help him save anyone. Finn then screams at him. He tells Will that it's nonsense and that nothing could be more important. A man who can't change himself can never hope to change the world. He asks Will if he isn't a sword that wants to become a wand. Saying that it's exactly what Finn is talking about, Finn points his sword right at Will and tells him to remember his roots. Go back to the beginning. He then puts the sword right by Will as he tells him that the lock has already been broken. After that, he once again has a smile as he looks at Will and tells him to take his sword. Finn then starts to clench his fist so much that blood starts to come out of it. Finn then drops the blood onto the sword as he tells Will to let them go on a quest, over the hills of darkness and beyond the false sky. Just then, the sword starts to emanate a bunch of lightning, and Will can't believe it. However, Finn tells him that he already knows the answer. He knows the name of the spell that sleeps inside his heart. Will then thinks back to everything that he has been through, all of his hardships. Finn then just keeps on going as he screams at Will to raise his voice and be reborn. Will then thinks about Elfie, and with that, Will starts to get up. He grabs a hold of the sword as he then screams that the name of his spell is Courage, and this panel is just top-notch, like, this is insane. We then see Will getting almost consumed by lightning as his hair color even starts to change. We then see Finn again, who says, "Limiter off," and we then know that things are about to go down. After that, he once again has that smile on his face as he tells Will to now draw his sword. We then see him do just that as he starts to zoom through the city. A monster that was about to attack some mages, it suddenly disappears into the straight nothingness. Thanks to Will, the mages can't seem to believe it themselves as they say that they were saved. Will then continue to do this throughout the entire city. He even goes right past Edward, who is left in pure awe as he can't grasp what happened. We see the same thing happening to Julius, Lihanna, and Wignall. Not only them though, as we also see Gina, who wonders what in blue blazes is going on. And trust me, I wonder the same thing. We then see Iris, who says that this light is striking down every last monster in its path. However, we then switch scenes as we see Sion protecting Colette from Deander. But sadly, nothing is working at all, and because of that, Colette screams at him to run. We then see Sion, who is badly hurt, but he then clenches his fist as he screams that he isn't going to run anywhere. He takes up his wand again and thinks that if Will were here, then he would never run. The Deander is heading straight for Sion, but he doesn't budge as he continues to think that Will's braver than any of them, and that he would be damned if he let him beat him. However, we then get to Will, who thinks that Sion is wrong, thinking that he was always jealous and wanted to be like him. Will spent his whole life trying to catch up to all those wands. He is just a selfish, pathetic loser. We then see Deander going to kill Sion right here and now. However, just before he manages to hit him, we see Will appearing right beside him as he thinks that right now he's going to let him be his Mage Blade, which is just awesome. After that, we also see both Sion and Colette being super surprised as they wonder if that is even Will. However, that will all have to come later as Will gets right into action as he zooms to the side and with no hesitation at all, gives Deander an insane strike to its left body. And trust me, I mean insane as we see Deander flying through, I don't even know how many buildings. We then hear someone saying that the Deander has reached Central Floss. After that, we see Cauldron, and someone tells her that they must evacuate. Cauldron, however, just closes her eyes and says, "Bubble, bubble, toil and trouble, Ceridos aculum." And it then looks like it creates some sort of water steam behind the Deander. She thinks that it should have finished it, but she wonders how it can still be alive. The other person then speaks up again, and once again tells Cauldron that they seriously have to move now. But Cauldron screams at her to wait, because just then, we see the goat, coming there again, walks up to Deander, who looks to be getting ready, and Will also looks super ready, as he tells him that if it's a fight he wants, then here he is. With that, both of them charge at each other at the same time, and they then collide, which creates a huge blast. We see some mages wondering what that rumbling sound was, and Donan tells them that it's coming from the city center. We then see Julius, Lihanna, and Wignall, who all three can't believe that Will actually intends to fight that thing. After that, we see Wignall wasting no time as he starts to run. Julius tells him to stop, but just then, Lihanna also starts to run, and Julius then tells her to stop as well. But this forces Julius to also run after them as he screams out that he is also out of magic. We then see Edward, who says Will's name, and he can't believe that it's actually him, thinking that it's him who is making these sounds and taking a stand against this monster. We then head up to the Magia Vanders, where they see this, and Elfie right away thinks that it's Will right there. After that, we see Claire, who thankfully survived. She is on a rooftop and thinks that they are evenly matched, even though Deander beat him last time. She then spots Edward and calls out to him. Edward is just super surprised that she is still alive. Claire just tells him not to worry about her, but she asks Edward who that boy is and what happened, and Edward then gets a serious facial expression right away. We then head to a castle where we see some mages. One of them, called Emma, thinks that they need to help him, but one boy stops her and explains that magic doesn't work on that thing, telling Emma that she will only get in the way. Besides that, it's no talent, right? They think back to all those times they laughed at him and put him down, wondering to themselves how they could go and help him now. But we see one of them getting the courage and speaking up. He explains that he is the one who saved their lives, and still he is out there fighting for them. He thinks that maybe he is just saying this to make himself feel better, but even then, he wishes that there was something that they could do. But just as they think that they see someone coming right behind them, it's Sion who goes to the edge and screams out with everything that he can, telling Will to go. It's not just him, however, as we see all 5 of them cheering Will on, or for the most part, as Julius just tells him to end this already. Anyway, seeing this makes the no-name mages gain courage as they then, together with them, scream that Will can do it and cheer him on. We see Donan, who screams at Will to crush that bastard, and all of them just start to give their hope to Will. We then head to Iris, who thinks that Regarden, the heart of the magical world, is cheering for a no-talent who can't use magic, and that it's something that she can't believe. With that, we get back to the insane action where we see Will go head-to-head with the Deander. While he does so, he thinks that he always felt so pathetic. It hurt so much knowing what he was. He was shunned and mocked. There were even times when he hated the entire world, and yet in a corner of his mind, he always hoped that they would accept him. He continues with his thoughts as he thinks that even if he never hears them cheering him on again, these people, this world, are giving him the courage to fight, and because of that, Will is set on wanting to protect them. After that, he jumps up, and he goes to yet again clash with the Deander. This time they get into a standoff with their swords, and both of them scream out with all that they have. But we then see the unimaginable happen as it's Will's sword that breaks first, and Will can't believe it at all. Meanwhile, the Deander looks super happy, but as that happens, we see Elfie, who gets up from her chair right away. We then see Iris, who thinks that Will's sword wasn't strong enough to endure his power. We then see the gang, who thinks that without his weapons the odds have suddenly turned. And we then see that happening as Deander gets in a massive hit at Will, which sends him away. However, he does manage to catch himself before hitting the wall. After that, we move back to Elfie, who is walking with determined steps. Cariot asks her to stop, saying that the Magia Vander are not to leave this room. However, Elfie puts him in his place right away, as she tells him that she isn't trying to leave, but that she is just going to watch from the window. She then steps out to the edge, and then gets a smirk as she explains that her hand slipped. Now, with saying that, we see that Elfie is the goat, as she drops a super cool looking sword straight down, right down. It's going at a rapid pace. However, it's heading straight at Will, and Will puts his broken sword up against it. After that, we see the sword going straight down, and as it hits the ground, it creates a massive explosion, and the entire stage gets filled with smoke. However, after it has cleared, we then see Will looking cooler than ever, as he says, fully charged, and that it's the Albiswiss weapon, which is just pure cinema. We then see Sion, who explains that it's like when they fought the Grand Duke. However, Julius then looks worried as he says that magic doesn't work on Deander no matter how strong the spell is, and Lihanna then just screams out with all that she has got right at Will. We then see the Deander, who is getting ready, as it then starts to charge right at Will. Will closes his eyes and thinks that he can feel it. He can feel the sword thrumming with power, and he knows that nothing can stop him now. We then see Elfie holding onto the sword together with him, and I love this panel. Now it's like an illusion of Elfie, I'm guessing, since she is at the tower, but you get what I mean. We then see Will swinging his sword at the Deander, and we then see its entire arm getting frozen. But that's not all, as since the Deander broke free from the ice, we can see that it has lost its entire right arm. Iris is stunned that it worked, and thinks that it shouldn't even be possible against a mage slayer. Edward, who is also looking at this, just calls it the Mage Blade. But we still aren't done with the characters' reactions just yet, as we then see Mars, who looks extremely mad as he screams out. He says that this doesn't make sense, and that he cut right through the slime. He looks right at Will, and wonders just who that is. We even see Headless on the side, who is also amazed. But we then move to Eleanor, who thinks that it's not magic, but that the power is something else. Zio, on the other hand, can't help but just laugh like crazy as he says that he loves that kid. Cariot is just silent, but in his head, he thinks that it's the fifth element, the primeval key that set the world in motion, as written in the lore. Meanwhile, Aaron looks pretty scary, but he asks Finn if he has finally attained them, the wand and the sword pledged by the Mage Queen. Anyway, with that, we then get right back into the battle as we see Will charging right at the Deander and getting hit after hit. The Deander tries to get back, but Will dodges it easily as he flies under it. After that, Will stands up for a bit before doing that ice attack once more, but this time it makes the Deander scream out because of the sheer amount of pain it's feeling, but it then gets a creepy smile as it gets some distance before it sends a ton of black flying attacks right at Will. However, Will can't stop with being cool, as just when they are about to reach him, he suddenly just stops them with the ice and then completely destroys them. Wignall even thinks that he is too strong. We then see Lihanna as well as Julius thinking that this merciless, overwhelming power is just like Albus Vina's, saying that it's almost like Elfie is fighting right by his side. And I just need to say this right now, but I completely love this series, because just look at this. This is pure amazement. Anyway, we then see Deander, who starts to scream out. With that, Mars then screams at Headless, who gets out his wand and starts to summon a bunch more beasts around. We then see the area that Will is in being completely maxed out with them, but we then see Elfie saying that it doesn't even matter as the two of them can handle them, which is so amazing yet again. We then see Will putting his sword into the ground before he starts to scream, "Overload, full burst," and uses an attack called Elglass Frost Spell 7. And after that, we see all the beasts that were heading straight at Will. They have now gotten completely either pierced by ice or just frozen, and after that we see his friends and Edward just looking at this in awe. Meanwhile, Mars can't seem to comprehend what is going on as he looks shocked. Even Headless drops his wand as he doesn't understand a thing. After that, we see Will and Deander looking at each other before Will says that they should end this already. With that, Will then somehow starts to enlarge his sword. With it longer, he then charges right at Deander and somehow gets behind him. After that, he slashes right at him, which we can see hurts him like hell, as he can't help but just scream out in agony. But that's not even all, as his entire body gets filled with ice. And then when Will lands and scratches his face, he decides to then break the ice, and then in turn, also straight up kill Deander. And we see all of his friends starting to cry out in happiness for him. We even see Werkner, who is somehow alive again, and he says Will's name. After that we move to Finn, who can't help but laugh a ton. He then has his hands out as he calls it superb, explaining that he was their last hope, and he surpassed his wildest dreams. He then drags his hand throughout his hair, and he then screams out, saying that he is sorry to keep him waiting, Mercedes, and that it's time to honor their bargain, explaining that it only took 500 years, and that it's a tiny delay. And I'm so lost at this conversation, but I can't wait to see what it means for the future. Finn then explains that this does it for the long prologue, telling the false sky to just wait, and that the curtain is about to rise. He then continues and asks if they shall begin, calling out to Will and saying that it's time to tell the tale of Wand and Sword, his Wistoria. And I can't contain my excitement for this, as everything is just amazing, like I can say it 100 times. But I will never be able to truly explain it. But this fight might have been the best I have ever seen. We then move back to Finn, who looks out and sees the dwarves helping to prepare the city again. Finn just smiles and says that it's regarding for you, nothing like dwarves to get a place fixed up quick. He then jumps back from the bridge and thinks that at this rate, it will be good as new in no time. He then sees someone inside who says, "Invest," which I don't know what it means, but I just might be slow. Anyway, he goes to them, and we see that it's Iris. Finn tells her that it's good to see that she survived, explaining that he thought that he told her to stop calling him that, telling her that he doesn't care for that name, and now I finally realized that Invest must be Finn's real name. Iris then looks determined and tells him that it's perfect, as she doesn't care for him at all. Finn says that she sure never changes. He then starts to smile as he asks her why she stopped him if she doesn't care. Iris just tells Finn to leave Will alone. She explains that if he gets involved, it will only push the clock forward, and if that happens, then he won't be able to stop himself. Finn tells her that this is something he didn't expect to hear, not from a watcher like her. He then asks Iris if she has fallen for him. Iris gets embarrassed as she screams that she hasn't. Finn then walks straight past her and apologizes, but says that he has to tell her that he will be taking him, and he then walks away, leaving Iris a bit sad. Anyway, we then continue to follow Finn, and he thinks that today's the graduation ceremony, and that playtime's over, as he then says Cauldron's name. After that, we get to Will, who wakes up in his room. He gets up and goes to wash his face, and he then notices that his hair is back to normal. He thinks back and wonders why it changed color before. After that, he can hear Kiki call out for him, and as he looks over, he sees where Rosty used to sit, but that he is now gone. He then sits on the chair and asks if Rosty might have known if he was still here, and he then looks at the goggles that Rosty left him, fixed, and he gets a sad expression, which, is totally understandable. After that, he puts on his clothes and says that he is off now. After that, we get to a big room where someone speaks up, saying that magical doctrine number 1, the great mage queen, said, "Rejoice and be merry, whether it blooms or blooms not. When the bud looks skyward, there will be flowers in heaven." We then see Cauldron in front, as she says that many lives were lost in the tragedy at the Terminelia, among them professors and more than a few students. To those who risked life and limb to protect their people, including the high mages from the tower, they express their deepest condolences and greatest respect, but they can hang their heads no longer. She explains that the tower has been threatened. It may be that the tragedy was not an end, but a warning bell to signal impending disaster. It is the duty of this school to take the hope that has been cultivated here and send it into the future, and so now they will begin the Regarden Magical Academy graduation ceremony. After that, we see Edward, who tells the students of the 401st class, "Please stand and take your places in front of the dais. Please approach when your name is called and receive your diploma." After that, we see everyone getting their diplomas and smiling. It's then Will's turn, and it goes to his hand. He then looks at Werkner, and the two of them smile at each other for a moment. Edward then continues, as he says that he hereby certifies that the 250 students just named, having completed the full curriculum, have officially graduated from Regarden Magical Academy, and he then bows his head to everyone. With that out of the way, we then see Cauldron, who goes back on stage and says that she will now announce the individuals who will be advancing to the tower. She tells them to please approach the dais when their name is called, and that they will be presented with a hat of mercies, which qualifies them to ascend the tower. We then see Wignall, Lihanna, Sion, Julius, Renes, Jarua, Rose, and Colette all being called. Meanwhile, Will is just left silent. Cauldron then stands before everyone and says that she hereby certifies that these 49 students have earned all the required credits and will advance the tower. We then obviously see Will, who looks super sad, and he then closes his eyes as he apologizes to Elfie. But just then, Cauldron once again speaks up. She says that, however, there is one more student whom she wishes to recognize. This student fulfilled the graduation requirements at the very last moment. She continues and explains that there are 2 ways to qualify for advancement to the tower. One is to earn 7,200 credits, and the other is to create a new spell. This student's spell not only lifted many out of the depths of despair, but also saved countless lives and the very capital itself. This is truly a stunning achievement and a glorious feat worthy of praise, explaining that the name of this spell is Courage. After that, she looks right at Will and tells him to step forward, which is so wholesome. We then see Edward trying to ruin the moment as he screams out, but Cauldron just puts her hand towards him, telling him to be silent. Cauldron continues and tells them all that she has no doubt that some will object to this decision. Nonetheless, if you agree that his courage is indeed magical, please give him a warm round of applause. We then see everyone talking among themselves and not clapping their hands, and that makes Will a bit sad from the looks of it. However, suddenly someone claps, and it's none other than Sion. After him, Colette follows, and then more and more start to continue and clap their hands until the whole crowd and everyone who is there start to clap their hands for Will. With that, Will steps forward and finally gets his hat, and he looks so sweet. After that, we see Werkner, who asks Edward if he can't just let it go. However, Edward tells him that he can't, asking how she can taunt him with that sweet dream just to plunge him into despair, and how she can let him go down the same path that he did, and that gets me so insanely intrigued anyway. Werkner then tells him that Will is going to overcome it, and that he knows it. After all, a certain terrifying yet caring professor already put him through the ringer. After that, we see Finn high up, who starts to laugh as he calls Cauldron a greedy person, but he then says that he guesses that it's time to spur the sword onward to new horizons. We then see the students walking away, and Cauldron speaks up yet again and tells everyone to let all here bear witness that these 50 students are hereby approved to advance to the tower. With that, she will name them the Grim Generation, for they surely face a turbulent future filled with countless trials, but she prays that they will reach the havens and vanquish the demons that would do them harm. After that, we see Rosty sitting on top of a wall, who has a smile as he tells Will that he did it and congratulates him. Now I'm not sure if this is the real him or not, but even if it isn't, it's still super sweet. After that, we head to the tower, where we see Sarissa telling Elfie that the graduation ceremony is over and that the new mages should be arriving soon. However, she notices that Elfie isn't listening, so she calls out to her, but we just see Elfie with a huge smile as she says that she has waited for so long and calls out to Will. We then see the text saying that year 506 of the magical era, the year later known as the Year of Hope and Loss, is just about to begin. After that, we yet again see more text and it says, "Whenever you talked about your dreams, your eyes glowed like gemstones." After that, we get a flashback to Elfie and Will when they were little. Elfie says that apparently, this sunset is at the end of a really long tunnel, but first, you have to get past all sorts of dangers, so they need to learn as much magic as they can. The text continues as it says that they shined so brightly, it was blinding while he was hopelessly weak. It does sound like it is Will's thought that we read, and we then get more of the flashback, as Will tells her that he is sure that she can make it there. However, he himself isn't so sure. After that, Elfie pushes Will onto the grass and tells him that she can't go without him, smiling at him as she says that there is no point if he isn't there, so she asks him if he will go with her, and after that, they just smile at each other. After that, we see them in real time as both of them have woken up, and they think that it's been 5 years since then, and now they are on their way back to each other. We then see a bunch of mages trying out costumes. Someone says, "Wisdom, inspiration, and learning are the 3 tenets of Regarden Magical Academy. Only those who have fully embraced these may don the colorless gloria, marking them as high mages." We then see that it's the gang as usual, and someone tells them that they look splendid. We then learn that it's Brantal Les Isles, the 10th generation owner of luxury fashion boutique Les Isles. He tells them all that he is honored to provide the garments for this new stage of the journey. We see Sion, who says that it fits perfectly, explaining that he does good work just like his father. Brantal tells him that he is too kind and that he apologizes for keeping him waiting until his departure date. Sion looks at him and tells him that it's not his fault. They are all still trying to get back on their feet after the Terminelia incident. After that, we head to Colette, who tells them that they are so light and flexible that they even have built-in magical resistance. Lihanna then explains that the Academy cloaks were excellent protective gear, but this is clearly superior. Wignall then adds in by saying that those mages really do have a knack for this sort of thing. We then see Julius, who says that this is their formal wear for when they enter the tower. Colette then goes to him and asks him what's the matter, explaining that he does look kind of glum. Julius then screams at her to leave him alone, and after that, he sees himself sitting on the floor. Colette just wonders what his problem even is. Lihanna then asks her if she has heard from any of the tower scouts. Colette tells her that she got a letter from the Earth faction a while ago. Lihanna then tells her that it's just it. She has been scouted by the Thunder faction, Wignall by the Elf faction, and Sion by the Fire faction, but no one has approached Julius yet, explaining that it's his problem. After that, we head back to Brantal, who tells them that their establishment has had the privilege of crafting the Gloria for many who have set out for the tower, telling them that may the Mage Queen's blessing be upon them all. After that, Wignall asks where Will is, and that he doesn't seem to be here. Colette tells him that he has already finished getting fitted, and that it means that he probably went to see Mr. Donan. We then head right to Donan's smith. Donan gets a smile as he tells Will that there he is. He then hands him a brand new sword, which looks awesome. Will starts to get a huge smile as he says that it's a violet blade. Donan explains that he recrafted his broken sword by adding a Wist gem to the Moria silver. That sword will still cut through magic, while also amplifying his own magic thanks to that gem in the center, telling Will that it's Wist set silver, and Will can't help but smile even more. Donan then pats Will on his back and says that he was mighty proud of that last sword, and then he just had to go and break it, telling Will that he puts those dwarves out of work with brute strength like that. Will just apologizes, but thanks him. He then asks Donan what he owes him. However, Donan just smiles as he explains that he owes him nothing, telling him to consider it thanks for saving them all. He then tells Will that he can do it, calling him a little swords wizard and telling him to go give them hell up in the tower, and Will tells him that he sure will. After that, we see him leave, and all of his friends are already there waiting for him, so he runs right to them and thanks them for waiting, and with that, they start to walk right to the tower. As they go there, we then see Claire, who is right on top of it. She looks at them and tells them that those brand new Glorias are blinding. She then tells them that they are extremely short-staffed right now, so she is afraid that it's just her for the welcoming committee, but not to worry, as she will get them to where they need to go. With that, she puts her hand on some sort of door. She says that she understands that they are ready to go. With that, She then pushes the doors up and welcomes them to the paradise of scientific inquiry and the hell of endless research, calling them her little chickadees. After that, we see Will going up the stairs along with everyone else. He holds onto his goggles and thinks that he would never have made it here without Rosty, and he then looks fired up as he says that he is on his way and calls out to Elfie. After that, all of them walk into a super dark room where they are unable to see anything, but luckily, Claire then takes out her wand and uses it to unlock the gate. We then see all of them looking super surprised, and Colette says that the floor's moving and that they are floating, and Will adds that the ceiling opened up. We then see that they have gone to the colorless garden and the tower facility's first floor. We see Rose, who is super hyped by that, and says that there's a sky and a horizon. There's even a floating castle, asking everyone how that's even possible, and wondering if they are really inside the tower. We then see Claire again, who tells everyone that this is the tower's first floor facility. When people outside the tower talk about the Upper Institute, they usually mean what's on this first floor. It's a foundation of daily life and production in the tower, bottom to top. It's also the highest seat of learning where they research and develop new spells. Only those recognized by the Magical Academy are allowed to enter, so it's an honor for any mage to set foot here. Of course, whether they get to stay here is up to them, and this seems to catch Will's attention. Claire points somewhere and tells them all to come along. They are today's guests of honor, and everyone's waiting at the central ceremonial hall. We see Lihana looking around at the sky and light, and Wignall tells her that he is sure that it's an 11 illusion magic, awfully advanced. He has a huge smile as he explains that they must have used Magnatura's ringful to create a vision of paradise inside the tower. Colette then gets hold of Will and tells him to look, telling him that those people are wearing glorias just like theirs. There's a moly garden and a magical creature testing site. She then gets happy as she explains that they really are on the front lines of magical research and that she is finally starting to feel like a high mage. Will smiles and tells her that it's a dream come true, but that's not even all, as Colette explains that there's even a crepe stand over there. After that, we see Lihana using her ability to zoom over there and get herself a crepe. It gets to the point where Colette is forced to drag her away as she tells her that they are in the middle of orientation. Will, who looks at this, says that he had no idea that Lihana was so into food. Wignall tells him that he could hardly believe her bottomless appetite the first time they met. However, as Will is having fun and smiling, we see Scion, who tells him not to get too excited, telling him that the tower isn't all sunshine and rainbows. Will asks him what he means, but he then admits that now that you mention it, those high mages have been looking at them funnily. We then get to Julius, who is in his head and wonders if the rumors are true, and he is then about to say what he means, but unfortunately, we don't get to see any more, as we then see the group advancing to some sort of huge castle. They are then ordered to go inside, and they are surprised by how the ceremonial hall looks. We then see someone new, and he is called Croitz Harlan and is an Upper Academy director. Rose says that Earth, Wind, and Dark, asking if those mages are from every faction. Colette, however, says that they are staring at them, and that it's kind of scary. However, we then also see that 4 of the Magia Vander seem to be here, everyone except for Aaron. We then see Wignall, who looks at Eleanor with a huge smile, but she just looks away. Meanwhile, Will looks at Elfie with a smile as he apologizes for taking so long. However, he notices something weird as Elfie looks strange. Anyway, we then move back to Claire as she calls out to the Magia Vander. She gives them 1,000 thanks for making the descent from their high seats atop the tower. Cariot explains that it's all part of the job, unfortunately, telling her to get on with it before they perish from boredom. Claire gets mad as she tells him that she can see that he has really moved up in the world and calls him her underclassman, saying that she sees that he is quite comfortable lording his position over others. Cariot just laughs as he says that he has done that for sure, and all thanks to his delightful upperclassman's brutal instruction. We then see Logwell, who calls out to him, and he says that he already knows. We then move back to Claire, who is now soaring in the air and says that the mighty Magia Vander has spoken. Without further ado, let's begin the bloom, and Will seems to be extremely confused by this. However, Claire continues as she says that first, those little chickadees who were scouted at the Grand Magic Festival or at some other point during their 6-year education are granted the blessing of color. We then see that it happened to quite a few in the group, and that their glory changed to match their faction's colors, and the emblems appeared on their brooches. We see Sion, who got into the Fire Fraction, Colette into the Earth Fraction, Lihana into the Thunder Fraction, and Wignall into the Elf Fraction. Meanwhile, Will looks super shocked, and Julius on his side looks crushed. Will then looks at Elfie in total disbelief. However, she just closes her eyes, and Will can't help but wonder why he didn't get a color. We see Elfie throwing a pillow right at Sarissa, as she calls her a liar. We then see Elfie cutely starting to crash out in her head, as she says that Sarissa told her that she could scout Will if he made it to the tower. Sarissa, while having more pillows thrown at her, tells her to please control herself, telling Elfie that she isn't a child anymore. Elfie doesn't let up at all, as she gets closer up to Sarissa and tells her that the only reason she waited this long was because Sarissa said that she couldn't scout him while he was still in school. She thought that Sarissa and the whole faction said it would be okay if he proved he was qualified. We then see Elfie pointing to the right, where it's a bunch of letters stacked on each other. Elfie tells Sarissa that it's her fault that none of her love, or rather scouting letters, ever made it to him. Sarissa just asks Elfie how many she actually wrote. She then continues, as she tells Elfie that it wasn't her decision, but that it was the upper institute. We then see Elfie looking super cute as she is sulking, and asks if by that she means Croitz. Sarissa tells her that she is spot on, saying that Croitz said that if it came to it, he wouldn't contest the Academy's decision, but he had his doubts about letting a lowly sword into a faction, and that he wouldn't approve any attempts to scout him. Elfie then starts to look mad, as she asks Sarissa if she can pop over to the upper institute, and that she is going to freeze the place solid, but Sarissa in an instant tells her no. Sarissa then sighs as she asks Elfie to please calm down, telling her that if Will can demonstrate his competence and abilities during the bloom, she have Croitz's word that she can scout him, continuing as she says that the tower is nothing if not meritocratic. If you play favorites, it won't endear Will to anyone, explaining that he is an outlier, and as such, he needs to convince the whole tower to acknowledge him. Sarissa looks right at Elfie, as she tells her that she will pull some strings with Claire and the other factions, or she asks Elfie if she is afraid that he won't be able to prove himself. Elfie tells her, of course not, saying that if she knows Will, then he will definitely make it through this. And after that, we see her in her bed hugging a ton of Will plushies, and this series really can't help but get any cuter. Anyway, we then cut back to the ceremony, and Claire tells them that they have been granted the blessing of color. We also get to see the Dark Fraction, who are cool, but something I'm not sure if we have seen before. Sion explains that his Gloria turned red. Colette says that hers turned brown, and that her brooch has the Earth Faction emblem. Claire then speaks up again as she says that the colors they have been blessed with mark them as distinguished mages, telling them to now go and that their factions await, continuing by saying that she prays that each and every one of them may reach the tower's distant heights. With that, we see everyone who got their factions go to them, and also Sion has a stare down with Carriot for some reason. After that, however, we head to the mages that didn't get a color, and they look to be in total despair as they are just standing there while everyone else leaves. We then head back to Claire, who tells them that those of you who have advanced to the tower but have still not been blessed are now colorless, or in other words, they are now worthless, explaining that only mages who belong to a faction may continue their ascent. No others may proceed beyond this point. Lihanna thinks that all the nobles' whispers were true after all. Sion adds on that if you can't join a faction, you are stuck on the first floor forever. You're just there to keep the higher mages going, like a cog in a machine. We then head to Julius, who looks crushed and says that everyone talks about the glory of the tower, but now he sees where it got its nickname, the graveyard, and as Will hears that, he also gets super shocked. Anyway, Claire isn't done. As she says, seeing that they have made it to the tower, they offer them another chance, telling them to show their skills here, and perhaps a faction will take them in, which brings them to the main event of this ceremony. Claire tells them that if they couldn't prove that they were qualified before, then now's their time to shine and make their flowers bloom. We then see some sort of insane stone monster coming out of a portal-looking thing, and Will asks if they are kidding, and wonders if these are even monsters. Claire explains that there's only one rule in the tower, and that's to prove your worth. With that, she tells them that the first bloom starts now, and we then see Julius right away, who looks to be more ready than ever as he screams out. Claire then tells all of them that their task is very simple: defeat the monsters in any way they like. Fight with finesse, or hit them with a flurry of slashy spells. Show the factions what they can do, but as she says that, we see the monsters throwing their own attack, and one of the mages gets sent back. He looks nervous as he wonders how you can even beat them. After that, we see a girl this time, and she looks fired up. She gets out some magic circles and attacks the monsters with fire. However, as the fire hits the monster, we can see that it just gets absorbed. It then gets dark around her as she realizes that magic doesn't work on them. After that, we head to Croitz, who explains that they are called Zoctonia, monsters produced by the tower to act as guardians of the first floor. Judging purely from the strength of a single specimen, it would be worth 30 credits, equivalent to the monsters on the lower to middle floors of the dungeon. We then see the mage getting sent back once again as she says that she can't beat them, thinking that she made it all the way to the tower, but that she still isn't able to. After that, we see Croitz putting up his glasses like an anime villain as he explains that recent graduates really don't stand a chance. The Zoktonia's twin shields deflect any perfunctory attempts at spell work, but just then, we head right over to Julius, who we can actually see managing to kill one of them by getting out a pillar of ice and stabbing it. However, he does look pretty exhausted from the looks of it. Just then, one of the Zoktonia appears right behind him, and they then go to attack him, but luckily, it was only one of his Ars Weiss clones that he got. After that, we see that it wasn't just one clone that Julius had, but that he instead had multiple standing all around the field. After that, Julius gets in the finishing strike on one more as he uses Glace Etir on one of them. We then see Sarissa, who tells Elfie that he killed 2 Zoktonia just like that, saying that his skill with that spell has improved significantly since the Grand Mage Festival, explaining that she didn't think anyone could master her clone spell to that level. However, her words don't matter as we just see Elfie slumping in her throne. After that, we head to the Wind faction, who also admit that Julius sure is in a different class, saying that they should recruit him and that they could put him right to work. We also see the Dark faction, who ask why he hasn't been scouted yet, saying that Julius is clearly an exceptional mage. Julius seems to be able to hear this as he gets excited, thinking that he really is a genius, thinking that he can use clone magic. He is good looking and highborn. They would have to be crazy to even consider comparing him to that riffraff, and he himself deserves to be scouted. He has a huge smile as he thinks that he is radiant and a prodigy, asking Elfie to please just look at him, but as he looks right at Elfie, we can see her looking away in an instant, and that seems to really shock Julius a lot. He then wonders about just why in his head, wondering if it was the Grand Magic Festival, wondering if it is because he insulted that no talent, and that she is mad that he bullied him, which to be honest is a valid reason if that's the case. We then see some other mages explaining that it's a pity, and that if only he weren't an ice user, then they would have scouted him. This makes Julius scream out internally. We then get to Sarissa once again, who explains that none of the other mages have shown any promise, but she then tells her to wait, as she thinks that, for better or worse, there is one who seems to be attracting attention. That one is Will, as he is just on the ground looking for the moment. Julius asks him what he is doing, asking if he is going to keep running away. But we then see Lihanna explaining that he isn't running away, but that he is instead watching. We then get to Will, who tells Kiki not to help him, and she just meows at him. We then see Will taking out his goggles, as he thinks that he now knows why Elfie had such a sad look on her face. She was telling him, "Sorry that I couldn't scout you." We then see a panel of Elfie looking at him intensely, before Will gets up and swings his sword around. He puts on his goggles as he, in his head, tells Elfie that it's okay, telling her that he will make it to her on his own 2 feet. And with that, we see him dashing right ahead. He goes to one of the Zoktonia, who tries to attack Will, but Will dodges it easily. With that, Will goes behind him and swings his sword back. He then lets out the most insane warrior scream I have ever heard before he completely cuts through the Zoktonia. Sarissa is amazed as she says that he is fast, but we then see Filvis as well as Lefia explaining that it isn't speed, but it's rather his weight. Logwell joins in it as he says that he jumped over Zoktonia's shield and cut the monster in 2. Guilford tells them that he's already learned enough about them to predict their behavior in so little time, but we know that it's just what the goat Will does. We then see another Zoktonia trying to attack Will, but he obviously dodges as he thinks that he has seen that move and that they tried it before. After that, he runs behind it as he thinks that he can read his enemy's movements better than ever. The Gloria is lightweight and perfectly flexible. It's so easy to move around in it. And on top of that, Mr. Donnan's sword cuts like a dream. He looks super cool as he explains that just now, he feels like he can do anything. We then see Julius looking shocked as we can see that even more Zoktonia starts to appear. He himself uses his Glace Eater and he shoots a ton of ice spears right at them. However, we see that one of his ice spears seems to go astray. He looks worried as he sees where it's going. But Will just smiles as he asks Julius if he can borrow that. We then cut to Will, who goes right to Elfie's platform since the ice spear is heading there, and we get a super small panel of Elfie's eyes as she just looks at Will. Anyway, we then see Julius's ice spear making a big explosion there. It creates a ton of smoke, but Elfie seems to be completely unscratched, because when the smoke clears, we see Will, who looks more intense than ever before, as he says that it's now fully charged and that it's his Glaus Wes. We then see that he absorbed the ice into his sword. We then see Elfie, who quietly says his name before Will quickly jumps back down to the battlefield. He says, "Load burst Glaus Mill," as he then goes completely ballistic at the Zonia and seems to be eliminating all of them. Everyone in the crowd just questions what happened, saying that it was a blizzard and a sword strike magic, but question if it truly was magic. We then see the smoke clearing once again, and there Will is standing, and the crowd starts to wonder if it is the Whist that saved the day at the Terminelia. We see Claire freaking out a bit as she wonders what they should do now, as he took out all of the Zonia. However, we don't need to wait to see what happens for long, as we then see a magic circle appearing right around Will, and we then see both Elfie and Will looking at each other with a bright smile. Elfie is then the first to speak up as she takes her wand and announces that it's a blessing from Albus Vina. She chooses him for the Ice faction, but it's not just her either, as we also see Cariot, who explains that he also chooses him for the Fire faction. They are then followed by the Earth, Wind, and Dark factions as well, and I'm so interested in the Dark factions, like, I just can't help it, as they look so dope. We then see someone saying that he just got blessed by 5 factions, and that he's not even a Multos. But we then see Croitz just looking at this while being silent. After that, we see a strange aura appearing around Will, as they say that it's unbelievable, and that it must be the first time in history. Claire then speaks up, and tells him that he has been blessed by multiple factions. As such, he may choose, asking him which faction he would like to join. Will just looks super shocked, while Elfie smiles at him with a huge smile. Will's eyes then light up as he is about to answer, but just then, we hear someone screaming at them to wait. It's of course the one whom no one likes. As we see Croitz explaining that this spell of his is not fit to be called magic. He explains that, in light of his feats during the Terminelia incident, they granted him honorary admittance into the tower. He is willing to allow that. However, he must question whether he is qualified to join one of their illustrious factions. But just as he sees that, we see Elfie getting up from her chair. Elfie has a serious and angry look on her face as she asks Croitz if he wasn't watching just now, saying that Will cast a spell. Croitz tells her that of course he has, but what he was casting was merely an appropriation of another's spell. Croitz screams out that he isn't a mage. When all's said and done, he's nothing but a boorish, unrefined warrior. Continuing, as he explains that he is no better than a dwarf, he shudders to think what scorn they would incur if they were to allow Will to ascend the tower. We then see Eleanor, who tells him that it's enough with his babbling and tells him to get to the point already. Croitz tells her that it's quite simple, explaining that if he has even an ounce of what it takes to be a wand, then let him prove it. With that, we can see the entire area starting to get filled with a bunch of bright light, before in the next panel, we see some sort of dragon worm-looking creatures appearing right around Will. Croitz explains that these are magical creatures known as Wars Ooze. They were recently developed to keep the dwarves in check, telling them to now watch as Croitz himself uses a spell called Christo Wreath, which pierces right through the Wars Ooze. Croitz tells them all that, as they can see, they disintegrate when stuck with even the lowest level spell. On the other hand, their gelatinous exterior is susceptible to only magic. After that, we see one of them appearing right behind Will. Will manages to dodge it easily as he then goes to strike it. Will does manage to cut it in half, however, it doesn't take long before the parts grow back together. Will then looks shocked as he explains that his sword can't hurt it. Just like with the Balkar, it's completely impervious to physical attacks. We see Elfie getting super nervous, while Clary wonders what he is going to do now. We then head to Cariot, who says that Croitz makes a fair point, explaining that it can't hurt to see him fight in battle. Moreover, as a Magia Vander, he must agree. The tower is the peak of the magical world. It makes little sense for a sword that cannot conjure its own magic to rise so high. We then head back to Will, who sees the Wars Ooze coming back at him. He thinks that slashing at it won't get him anywhere, but still, artificially created things like these always have a core, thinking that he just needs to find it and crush it. However, we then see a panel of Croitz asking him if he's that naive. Anyway, with that, back to Will, who we can see putting his sword right into one of the Wars Ooze. While he does that though, Croitz continues as he tells him that they gave it a gelatinous body. What makes him think that they couldn't give it a gelatinous core as well? Telling him not to underestimate the tower and that they are the pinnacle of all magic. We then see on the side that it looks like Will is really struggling. But as he has his sword in its body, he can see electricity coming out. Because of that, Will gets back and gets some space as he has now realized that the Wars Ooze has the power to shoot out electricity. We then see Claire up in the sky, who explains that a stun attack is for suppressing dwarves, saying that his creations are as nasty and vicious as ever, as she calls out to Croitz. We then head back to Will, who we can see is exhausted, but it's not just him. Some of the no-name mages also see this and think that it's bad, and that he will lose at this rate. We also see someone who I think is called Emma, but she says that they are high mages now as well. With that, all three of them scream out that they can help, and that if Will can use their magic, then he can take it down. But just as they were heading to Will to help him, suddenly, a huge explosion happens right by them. We then see that it's Croitz, who looks mad as he tells them to stay out of this. He explains that their audition has already ended, and that this is a trial to judge the heretic. We then head to the spectators area, where we see Sion walking forward. He goes to the edge before slamming his hands down with all that he can. He then looks super mad, as he thinks that it's not a trial at all. We then go back to Will, and we can see that the Wur's ooze is going for him. Will manages to go away from it, and after that, he tries to go on the offensive as he goes to it and cuts it multiple times, but even then, it just starts to regenerate. After that, a big explosion happens, and we can see Will flying out and hitting his head right next to a stone pillar, which must have hurt. Will looks super hurt, but even then, he tells himself not yet, and that there's no way that he would give up. But just as he has gotten back up on his feet, Croitz suddenly snaps his fingers. This makes it so that the Wur's ooze starts to wither away. He tells Will that it would be pointless to continue, saying that, as expected, he is not qualified to join a faction, and we can see Will looks completely crushed by that. Still, Croitz continues with his speech, as he says that he proposes that he remain colorless, and that his name be added to the lowest tier of the upper institute. His wisdom defeated the Deander. It is no exaggeration to call it extraordinary. He then gets a smug look as he says that he assures him that they will unravel the mystery of this unknown power and then share it with the magical world. We then go to Cariot, who asks Croitz if he intends to make him a guinea pig, saying that if he can unlock the mystery of the fifth element and put it to use, then he doesn't care who takes him. We then cut to Elfie, who has started to emanate a ton of ice around her, and she looks at Cariot with an intense glare. Cariot tells her that he won't have her sulking like a petulant child, but still, Elfie doesn't care as she screams out. She tells Croitz that this isn't what they agreed on, telling Croitz that she has had enough of this. Will then looks hopefully with big eyes right at Elfie, which is cute. Anyway, we then cut to Zio, who tells them that all this arguing is getting on his nerves and calls them losers. Zio then explains that they will be having another bloom soon anyway, telling them to save their wrangling until then. Will looks super lost as he hears that, but we then cut to Claire, who explains that in a normal year, the next bloom would be in about 6 months, but every faction has urgent vacancies to fill, what with all the losses they suffered at the Terminelia. Because of that, this year they are making an exception by having the second bloom in 1 week. Claire continues as she tells them that as survivors of that tragedy, they, the so-called Grim Generation, have more potential than anyone in the magical world. The Tower, no, scratch that, even the world has high hopes for them. Or to put it in another way, they intend to make them suffer on their behalf, so she hopes that all of them who failed to be blessed today will give it their all at the next bloom. She then tells Will that it also includes him, and he still looks pretty lost, but with this, he still looks a bit hopeful. Claire then speaks to the Upper Institute and Magia Vander, asking if she can assume that they can all agree on this. After all, the Tower only has one rule, which is to prove their worth. We see Croitz being a bit annoyed by this. Meanwhile, Cariot says that it's fine with him. All of them, including Magia Vander, made it here by doing just that time and time again. Claire then smiles at Sarissa, and Sarissa thanks her so much. We then cut to Eleanor, who asks if this farce is over. We then see both Filvis and Lefia using their powers and close the thing that they were standing on as they then move up. We then see Lahana, Sion, Colette and Wignall being pretty down because of this. But the one who looks most crushed is Elfie, who just says Will's name before she goes up. We then also see Croitz again, who calls it a waste of time and says that it's not even worth sighing about as he then walks away. We then see the mages that were left. Julius says that they are having another test like this in just 1 week, but suddenly he hears someone falling and calls out to them. We can see that it's Will who is now lying down on the floor. Julius is silent as he sees this, but he suddenly hears some weird sounds coming from Will. So he asks Will if he is crying, but he tells Julius that he isn't, but that it's just too funny. Julius can't believe it, but Will continues as he says that it's always the same. After all the obstacles, all the times he thinks it's over for him, just when he thinks he has almost made it, he gets shoved right back down again. We then see Will clenching his fist. He thinks about all of the times that he has been done over and treated unfairly, but after that, he thinks about what Finn told him. With that in mind, he screams out and puts his fist up towards the sky. He then looks super determined as he screams out that he will make it to the top, no matter how many times he gets pushed down, and this is why Will is the literal GOAT. After that, however, we cut to Zio and Guilford walking. As they are walking, Guilford tells Zio that it was unexpected. Zio asks him what he is talking about. Guilford explains that Zio didn't give Will his blessing, saying that he thought that he favored his type. Zio then just turns around and puts his hand on Guilford's head as he calls him an idiot, telling him that he still hasn't figured him out yet. He then lets go of Guilford, and we can see that he didn't like getting held, but Zio then looks pretty cool as he tells Guilford that when a guy has to claw his way up from rock bottom, that makes him way more interesting and way tougher, which goes without saying. With that, we head to the temporary quarters, tower facility, first floor. We then see Will studying. From the looks of it, I thought about explaining what Will is saying here, but it's just a bunch of nonsense to be honest. Anyway, we see the other mages watching him. After a while, they approach him and tell Will that they would like for him to come with them to train in the dungeon. Asking if he is interested, then they would be happy to have him in their party. Will can't believe it as he is super shocked, but just then we see the door slamming open with huge power. It's none other than Julius, who goes right to Will and tells the other mages that he is training with him. Will looks super confused and asks him what he is talking about. Julius looks annoyed as he tells Will that what he needs right now isn't a bunch of little pretend friends. He then puts his hand onto the table as he tells Will that what he needs now is to control that whiz ability or whatever he calls it. Will seems to be super confused by this, but Julius once again slams his hands down on the table as he tells Will that he is going to help. Will tells him that he could use the help, but he asks Julius about why he would do that. Julius is silent for a bit before he tells Will that he and Julius have had their ups and downs, but he agrees with Wignall and the others, telling Will that he thinks of him as one in his party. With that sweet talk, we see Will getting super happy and excited. Will has the biggest smile ever as he thanks Julius, thanks him for the offer, and tells him that he gladly accepts it. We then see Julius getting a creepy smile as he calls it excellent, while Will can be seen in the background still looking super happy. We then get into Julius's brain once more, as he thinks that as if anyone in their right mind would help someone like Will, saying that this is purely for his own future. He thinks that he will help Will and earn brownie points with his alleged childhood friend Elfie, then his honor will be sure to be restored. He starts to look even creepier as he thinks that he will milk this wannabe dwarf for everything he's worth, and then he will be scouted into the ice faction. After that, he calls out to Will and points his finger right at him, telling him to not just sit here and that they are starting his training right now. Will just gets a super happy feeling as he then jumps right up as he screams out. Meanwhile, it looks like Kiki can see through Julius pretty easily. After that, we head to the Fields of Solitude, first floor facility East End. We then see them on some sort of grass field. Will has his Glaucus fully charged now, and he looks super cool, but he then calls out to Julius and tells him that he charged it up like he told him, but he asks Julius just what he is supposed to do now. Julius looks right at him and tells him that he will need to keep the spell charged. With that said, we see Julius doing an incantation as he says, freeze, whisper, quell, and dance. Thy name is Guardian, their name is Icebird. After that, we can see that he has managed to summon some Fride Gardinas, which are flying right at Will. As they are approaching Will, Julius tells him that they are low-level guardians, but that he put a fair amount of magical energy into them. They'll survive a hit or two of weak magic if it's their same element. He continues as he tells Will that what he is going to do is fight with the Guardians while keeping his output low enough that he doesn't destroy them. Will looks to be super shocked as he even starts to sweat and asks what Julius means. Julius then looks right at him as he tells Will that he is going to learn to activate that whiz thing all by himself. Julius goes even further as he says that in 6 years at the academy, Will has never managed to cast even the most elementary of basic spells. At this point, instead of trying to learn a pre-existing spell, it's going to be much more constructive to figure out how to use the freaky new power that he has got. Will tells him that it may be true, but he asks how he can possibly do that. Will goes into his own head as he thinks that he can't use his own magic. That's why he has to charge his sword with other people's spells. He is dependent on outside magic. The idea of generating his own magic to activate Wiz kind of goes against the entire concept. What they are trying to do is to produce one from zero. It's the equivalent of creating a new spell. Julius seems like he has had enough as he screams at Will to be silent, and that he doesn't need to hear his theories. Julius continues as he tells Will that there's no need to set their course for a port that they don't know they can reach. What they are going to do is extremely simple. He is going to anchor the magic. Now, this we can see is leaving Will is super confused, but Julius screams right at him as he says that it doesn't matter if he borrowed the magic from him. If he can anchor that energy inside of him for life, then it will be his magic. Now, I don't want to credit Julius too much, but this is really clever. We then learn that if his current output is 100%, then they want him to reduce that to 1 or even a fraction of 1%, saying that the most important thing is to limit that output so that he can keep the magical energy. Julius isn't done, as he says that Will is going to hold on to that energy as he goes about his day, even when he is sleeping. Ideally, he will learn to control it so that he only increases the output when he is in battle. If he can manage to do that, then he will be using his own magic, and that is honestly pretty insane, as we even see. Will starts to get amazed as he hears that. His eyes even start to light up a ton and start to sparkle. Julius tells him that at the next bloom, he can get that he is fighting those oozes again. They very kindly fall apart. When you hit with a minimal amount of magical energy, if all he has to do is beat them, then it shouldn't matter how puny his magical power is. Julius then starts to scream as he tells Will that there's only so much that they can do in less than a week. First they need a goal, then they work out the steps. None of that cramming stuff he likes doing. We head into Will's head as he thinks that Julius wants him to anchor the magical energy and keep it inside him, using so little of it that he doesn't destroy the Guardians, thinking that this is basically magic control training, using Guardians as restraints. Will then looks closely at Julius and thinks that it makes perfect sense and that he really earned his spot in the school's top 3. Will then gets another huge smile as he thanks Julius, saying that he really means it. He tells Julius that he is amazing and that he doesn't know why he didn't get into a faction. While that was supposed to be a compliment, it felt a bit backhanded by Julius, who tells Will that it was his fault and starts to scream. With that, we cut scenes, and we see Iris asking Elfie why she didn't give her blessing to Julius. Iris says that even as a silent watcher, she is struggling to stand by while his talent goes to waste. Elfie looks to be sulking still, but she then explains that it's because he said pervy things about stripping her bare. He never stopped picking on Will, and on top of that, he revealed her dark past to the entire school. And now, if I'm honest, then those are completely fair reasons. Iris then says that this is completely personal then. Elfie then tries to change the topic, as she asks Iris what Aaron thinks about Will. Iris just tells her that he says, "What will be, which only makes me so much more confused. Anyway, she then continues as she tells them that it's what he thinks. It seems that unlike the headmistress Calden, Aaron isn't necessarily going to welcome a sword into the wandfold with open arms. However, if Will can forge his own path, then Aaron may still acknowledge his willpower and strength. We then see Sarissa on the side who thinks that Will, the appearance of Wiss, has divided opinions in the tower. Personally, she hasn't managed to wrap her head around what Wiss even is. She looked it up in every book she could find, but there wasn't much information. After that, we see Iris once again speaking up as she says that the power to turn the world on its head is calling it a true anomaly. We then once again cut to Sarissa, who thinks that she'd hate to say this to Elfie, but she isn't so sure how best to deal with him either. After that, we once again cut back to Iris, and this was very like back and forth. Anyhow, she has a smile on her face as she says that, of course, if treatment of her dear schoolmate Will starts to take a sour turn, she will use her watcher position to take him into protective custody, telling Elfie that she has nothing to worry about. Elfie then just gives her a face and smiles back as she tells Iris that she really should save those fantasies for her dreams, calling her a little thief. And with that, we see both of them looking pretty angrily at each other, and Sarissa just thinks that Will might actually start a civil war in the tower. With that, however, we cut back to Julius and Will. Julius sends a ton more guardians at Will, but he then asks Will how many times they have to start over. Will is caught off guard, but Julius looks exhausted as he tells Will that he destroyed another guardian. He isn't showing any progress at all, asking how much of Julius's magical energy he is planning to waste. We then, however, head into Will's, as he thinks that as hard as he tries, he can't hold out past 50 minutes any longer and the energy dissipates. Not to mention that as soon as Wiss is undone, it saps all of his physical strength as well, calling it a pretty intense weakness and saying that if this keeps up, then he will have used up all this time for nothing. After that, Will calls out to Julius. He tells him that he really thinks that they should try to find out more about Wiss before they do anything else, even if he isn't quite sure what this power is, continuing as he says that he searched almost the entire school library, but nothing really mentioned it. Werkner seemed to know something, but apparently not much about how it works. He explains that it will take more time, but that he thinks that they should ask the High Mages if they can check the tower's archives or find someone who knows something, but before Will can even finish his sentence. Julius tells him that he's already working on that. He explains that he sent one of his clones to the Upper Institute library, and he has another one looking for someone from the Finn tribe to see if they know anything. Will is super shocked as he says that he is using remote-controlled Weiss. Will then says that he can cast the spell without help now, but he then scratches that as he once again asks Julius why he would do that, saying that it's way too much. Julius then screams right at him and tells him that it's because they have no time. They have to train and collect information all at once. They have no other option. It then gets dark around him as he holds onto his head. He thinks that looking at 3 scenes simultaneously is making everything a jumble, saying that this is why he hates multitasking. Will still doesn't seem to understand any of it, as he once again asks him why he would do this all for him. This makes Julius crack as he tells Will that it's because he has ulterior motives, obviously, telling Will that he should have figured it out already. He continues as he screams out that as a mage of the House of Rheinberg, it is his duty to climb to the top. He is only using Will to get there. Besides, a nobleman never breaks a promise after all, as Will hears that and thinks that it's true. Thinking that even after the Grand Magic Festival, Julius kept his promise to Donnan and the Dwarves. After that, we can see Will with a smile on himself, as he then scratches his nose before telling Julius that he really is kind. Julius is completely mind-blown by that, but Will tells him that he thinks that everyone shows kindness in different ways. For Colette, it's helping him. For Werkner, it's scolding him. Even Scion has his own brand of kindness. Will then looks so wholesome and so cute as he tells Julius that he is saying that he is only doing it out of a sense of duty, but he is still a good person, a really kind one. This seems to trigger something in Julius's brain as he seems to remember something. He then starts to walk away as he asks Will where this is all coming from, asking him if he has to make everything weird. He then ends it by telling Will that he is taking a break. Will tells him that it's fine and that he is going to keep trying a little longer and then thanks him again. We then see Julius walking away before getting a close-up shot at his face, as he in his head asks Will, how dare he call him kind, thinking that he couldn't care less about kindness. After that, we see a really young Julius. We see a maid called Anna telling him that he is so kind. Julius tells her that of course he is, explaining that it's a noble's job to help the weak. Anna just smiles at him before patting him on his head. Julius then asks Anna if she likes him when he is kind. Anna takes off some sort of necklace as she tells him that everyone does, telling him that they all adore their kind-hearted young master Julius. But Julius then thinks that it was all a lie. He explains that it didn't matter how kind he was. Anna went off to belong to someone else, and then he didn't need to be kind. It's smarter to be selfish. Flaunt his talent, use others to his advantage, ridicule the weak, and gloat about his superiority. We then head back to real time, where he looks mad, saying out loud not to look at him the way Anna did, and talking about kindness. After that, we see the necklace he got from Anna in his hand, as he says that he doesn't need kindness, thinking that there was a Julius who was kind, but that he killed him. However, as he is walking, we can see that it's something following him. With that, we head into Croitz's laboratory and the tower facility's first floor. Here we see Croitz calling it a pointless struggle. He then calls to someone called Charles to speak to his colorless comrades, and Charles tells him that he will. With that, we once again head back to Julius, who has gone somewhere else now. He says that this is what he gets for not paying attention, explaining that he is now lost. But suddenly he starts to wonder if this is a dungeon. Now, why does he think that? Well, because he can hear some attacks closing in on him. Luckily, he is fast enough to react and manages to create a shield out of ice. Julius then looks ahead and sees some mages, explaining that they are Upper Institute mages. The mages tell Julius that these are orders from the top. They are to find the reprobates running around their garden like they own the place and teach them a lesson. Explaining that their unsightly training ends once and for all, Julius can't believe this, as he says that they are trying to stop them. They want to take away the minuscule chance that they have of passing the next bloom. But asking if they aren't tower mages as well. However, his talk doesn't seem to help that much right now, as all of them start to send magic spells right at him. The first one tells Julius that he couldn't possibly understand. He doesn't know the humiliation of making it to the tower only to be stuck here. Mocked as a colorless nobody, the other one says that he refuses to spend his whole life as a cog in the tower machine. And then lastly, we see the third one explaining that they are shorthanded after the Terminelia. This is their chance. Croitz promised to send letters of recommendation to the factions if they crush him. We then see Julius as he thinks that this is the result of the cutthroat competition inside the tower. These sad wands have given up their dignity in their desperation to crawl out of their graves, but rotten as they are still high mages. And with that, we see Julius being sent back into a wall. We then get a close-up of his face, and he looks pretty damaged. Julius thinks that he is all but spent after summoning so many guardians and overusing Ars Weiss, and they have him outnumbered too. With that in mind, we see Julius getting a smile as he calls out to them. He calls someone Tony and says that he is his 1-year senior. Next up is the arrogant and self-important Mary, and lastly, Oren, his brazen little underclassman. Julius starts to get up as he tells them that they advanced to the tower so quickly with the new spells they invented, but how the mighty have fallen. He starts to look insane as he calls them a sorry sight, saying that the Upper Institute really squeezed the last drop of worth out of them, telling them that he would rather die before ending up a used-up rag as they have been. We then get to Tony, who tells him that he didn't get scouted either, and that he is just as colorless as they are. Julius just starts to laugh as he asks if his eyes are just for show. Telling them that he is Julius Reinberg with an intense tone, he continues as he tells them that he will use that no talent will, and anyone else in his path, soar to the top of the tower and become Elfie's successor. He then quickly thinks about Anna before saying that after that, he will look down on every single person who abandoned him, telling them that he doesn't care if he has to use the Magia Vander to do it. As for the three of them, they are no good to him now. This only made them a lot angrier as they scream his name and explain that even at the academy, they never liked him. After that, all of them sent more magic spells right at Julius. As they are going right at him, he thinks that, exactly, there's nothing kind about him. The people standing in front of him who hate his guts are proof of that. He asks Anna if she sees, thinking that he has changed and that he isn't the same kid anymore. But before he could finish that thought, we see that the magic attacks suddenly go astray. After that, we see Will in front of him as he asks Julius if he is okay. Will explains that some high mages attacked him out of nowhere. He thought that they might go after him too, so Kiki and he came looking. Julius just looks at Will with an angry stare as he asks him why he would help him. Will, the sweet boy that he is just shocked as he says that they helped each other all the time in the dungeon, and he is going out of his way to train him. But before he can finish speaking, Julius screams at him, asking Will if he realizes how much he belittled him during the Grand Magic Festival, and asking if he is okay in the head. Will still just give a smile as he tells him that he knows, thinking that he is an idiot, who instantly likes someone as soon as they are kind to him. Julius then thinks about Anna and how she told him that they all adored him. After that, he looks at Will and sees once again that they have the same smile. This makes him super mad as he straight up goes to punch Will, but it ends up being himself who gets the most hurt. Will, on the other hand, just asks him why he hit him. Julius then looks him dead in his eyes as he tells Will that he hates him. He continues as he screams that he hates Will and his stupid face, which is really mean, but I think that Will doesn't take this too much to heart. We then see the other loser mages, who wonder what's up with them, but Tony screams that it doesn't matter and that they can crush them right now. Just then, Will gets right into action as he tells Julius to stand back. Julius just tells him that he doesn't get to order him around, but just then, something strange happens as out of nowhere, a ton of fire starts to fill up the entire place where the mages are standing. Someone asks them if the academy didn't teach them not to use magic for things like this. Will then looks up and asks who someone is, and we then see someone, a super cool looking mage, who introduces herself as Seridwin. She tells them that they have shown her such a wonderful display of adolescence, asking them if they won't let her thank them with some tutoring. And we can see Will, who looks excited, while Julius just looks mad in the background. Anyway, after that, Julius locks in as he says that he recognizes that name. He explains that she is one of the 7 mysteries of the academy, right up there with the Watchers and the Witch of the Hammer. She kidnaps students night after night to use them for her magical experiments. We then get a close-up of Seridwin as she assures them that she doesn't do anything that scary, explaining that she simply finds interesting students and gives them training and guidance, just like what she is offering to the two of them now. Will looks amazed if she is truly offering training and guidance for both of them. Seridwin tells him that it's right, saying that he probably doesn't know this, but she has had her eye on him for quite some time now. We then head to Julius, who rightfully gets suspicious by that, thinking that she is a witch that he has never seen in his life before after all. But then, funnily enough, we see her kidnapping both Julius and Will, as she tells them that they can talk details later. First, they should relocate, as after all, if they stay here, then the Upper Institute goons will find them. We then see them flying around in the sky, and Seridwin says, "You can tell yourself it was a trap, and just fall for it with a music note by it." After that, we can see her tapping somewhere before, out of nowhere. A door seems to appear, and she tells them that they have arrived. We then learn that this is the secret base for single witches. She tells them to sit anywhere they like. With that said, she then uses her magic to get out a ton of food for them, and I mean a ton, as it's everywhere, and it looks fantastic. Seridwin tells them that it's a little late for them to have dinner. Saying that she made it herself, Julius just looks at her with an annoyed facial expression as he asks her if she really expected them to eat food made by some shady witch. But just then, he hears Will on his right start to dig in, which makes Julius a tiny bit furious. Will just tells Julius that Kiki says that it's fine. After that, Julius changes topics as he explains that what he would like to know is where in the world they are. Seridwin tells them that this is the hideout that Claire secretly built in the first floor facility, saying that she asked Claire if they could use it, as after all, Claire is her apprentice. Will is super shocked by that, but says that, then again, it explains a lot. Julius adds on that she got that devil attitude from Seridwin then. Anyway, Julius then goes right into it, as he asks Seridwin what she is plotting that she needs Will for. Will then looks at him and tells him that this woman helped them, and on top of that, she is Clary's teacher. Julius just then gets furious as he tells Will that he needs to learn not to be so trusting, explaining to him that she could be one of the Upper Institute's assassins too, and that all of this could just be an act, screaming right at Will's face that even if it's not, there is no possible way that a mage who has mastered sorcery would help them for nothing. She could be scheming to use them for her experiments, just like the school legend claims. Seridwin just laughs lightly as she hears that. She then says that they do say caution can be a sign of a good mage, but with that in mind, she decides to get out a ton of magic circles right around them. Both Will and Julius get super shocked. Will thinks that it's a supermassive magic barrage, so many spells just like that with no incantation, wondering when she summoned them. Julius, on the other hand, thinks that it's 6 different elements, all of them but light. Wondering if she is a Multos. Then it looks like Seridwin is standing on business, as she tells them that at their current level, if she truly wanted to, she could crush them both in 2 seconds flat, saying that this doesn't prove anything, but does it at least convince them? She then starts to just casually laugh as she tells them that if she meant them any harm, this big bad witch would have eaten them up ages ago. Julius, right after that, as he is still annoyed, tells her to first confess what exactly she is plotting, telling her that if she can't tell him, he refuses to let her teach Will. Will just says his name, but Julius then gets right up in his face as he tells him not to get him wrong, explaining that he is the one who gets to take advantage of him. He doesn't want her stealing him from under him, so if Will thinks that he is being nice here, then he better think again. While he is going off, we can see Will just holding his hands in front of his ears. Anyway, with that, we cut back to Seridwin, who is laughing. She tells them that it's alright, and that she will tell them. She starts it off with a bang, as she explains that she knows a little something about Wiss, and this makes both Will and Julius light up in an instant. Seridwin then continues saying that one of the reasons she came to them was to offer her assistance. As for the second reason, there are stirrings in the Upper Institute, and it's starting to head in an unpleasant direction, telling Will that there are forces that are trying to ensnare him. Will looks determined as he asks her if she is talking about Croitz. With that, we, funnily enough, head right to him as he asks if Will has disappeared. We then see Charles, who is his assistant. He explains that Will, along with Julius, according to the report, was someone intervened. Croitz screams at Charles to search every nook and cranny. The tower hasn't logged any magical signature, indicating that he left the first floor, telling Charles that he must be hiding somewhere. Charles then looks nervous as he asks if he can ask something. He asks Croitz why he is so intent on destroying Will that he is willing to risk the wrath of Elfie. Croitz asks Charles if he thinks that he can let such valuable material fall into the hands of those war-obsessed factions. Wiss needs to be put to good use efficiently and to the fullest, like this Mage Slayer. He explains that he doesn't know what organization created it, but it had magnificent potency, mass-produced power that can be wielded even by low-level monsters, armaments that can turn even untalented mages into something useful. This is exactly what they of the magical world should strive for, he continues, as he says that the real power is in numbers, even in efficiency. Numbers matter. The presence of a mere 5 unstoppable wands won't help them fight off the celestial host. What they ought to seek is not a supreme one, but a standardized ultimacy. For every mage to be able to wield the power of Wiss, that is no doubt their true prime. And to that end, he desperately needs Will's body, so that he then can cut it open, and he looks manic as he says that. We then move back to Charles, who explains that not even the Magia Vander, let alone any of the factions, has seen this hidden side of Croitz, calling him the Mad Dissector. He then takes out the heart of the Mage Slayer, and then, in the next panel, it goes dark. As we then see him completely crushing it, Croitz then calls out to Charles, telling him to inform the factions that he will have a strategy for countering the Mage Slayers shortly. He has nearly grasped the concept. Charles, who is now on the floor with shock, thinks that if Elfie knew about this, it would be the end of the Upper Institute. We then once again cut to Croitz, who looks scary while saying that the next puzzle he will solve is Wiss. With that, we then move back to Seridwin, who says that if she had her way, she would have preferred to watch over Will as he climbed to new heights all on his own, but the situation no longer allows for that. Seridwin admits that she does want to transform him, but not into a guinea pig. That's why she decided to intervene when she did. Plus, sweet little Elfie personally asked her for help. Will looks happy right away as he hears Elfie's name back to Seridwin, who says that it's all about her, telling them that how they interpret it is up to them. With that, we see both of them being silent. Will then speaks up and calls out to Julius. He tells him that he wants to trust her. Will, in his head, thinks that he doesn't think that she is lying. He gets this strange feeling like he has known her for a very long time. Julius just looks at him before telling him to have it his way, saying, "What do you care if he goes over to whoever's going to make it worth your while?" That's the only reason that he helped Will to begin with, and this is so funny. Anyway, Will tells him that he didn't mean it like that, and we then see Seridwin just laughing as she sees this. Then, in her head, she thinks that they are such good friends now, explaining that they would make a good party. After that, she gets up, and in the next panel, she appears right in between them as she tells both of them that it's settled for them. It's now time for their power-up training, saying that Seridwin will show them the way. Will just tells her, "Alright." However, in the next panel, Seridwin tells Will that now she knows that they just met. However, she will need Will to take his clothes off, and Will looks super scared. In the next panel, we see Will without his shirt as he asks why he has to be naked. Julius says that he knew it, and that Seridwin is some kind of freaky fetishist. Seridwin is embarrassed as she tells them that it's not like that at all, explaining that this is a necessary evil and telling Will to put his hands down. Julius, however, doesn't budge as he tells her that it's exactly what they think it is, telling her that she is 100% an authentic pervert of a witch. But he suddenly gets silent as he sees all of the scars on Will's body. Julius thinks that he has heard rumors, but wonders just how much he tortured himself to get to the tower. Anyway, we then head to Seridwin, who tells them, "Let's see." She touches Will's back and asks him when and how he got this scar on his back. Will tells her that it was probably when he was little and shielded Elfie. Seridwin then looks smug as she says that she sees and then slaps his back, which makes Will embarrassed or something in that direction. Will then asks her what she is doing now, but she tells him that she is making sure she knows where to find the key to the next door, explaining that the truth is that she has been watching their training in secret. She tells them that it was a very good job coming up with the idea to anchor the magic. If Will can just control the anchored magic, then he will have mastered Whis. That concept is correct indeed. Then the next panel is kind of strange as Seridwin seems to be using Will's head as a table for, let's say, something rather large. She then winks right at Julius as she tells him that he could stand to be a little more true to himself, but that he really is an excellent mage. Julius, however, is just silent. He then tells her to spare him her obvious flattery, asking if he was wrong or not. Seridwin, however, tells him that he wasn't wrong, as far as anchoring the magic or saving it up inside himself. Will has already achieved that. After all, the blood of a mage of a wand flows in Will's veins, explaining that it's just that his body is a little unique. Instead of directing the magical energy outside, it greedily hoards it inside. Though his flesh may scream if he takes in a hit of external magic, his body will store it. Will is obviously super confused, but Seridwin tells him that his assignment now is to figure out how to access the magic that he has stored inside, telling him that, in other words, he will learn how to charge the spell without help. That is the next stage for him to attain. However, Will then tells her to wait up. He says that he thought that charging Whis was dependent on other people's spells, on external power. Seridwin tells him that, sure, it's true, but that it's not the only way, telling him that if he needs proof, then he should remember that he activated abilities other than the spells he has charged. After that, Seridwin starts to create a circle around him, and tells him that he is now going to learn how to do it on command, telling him that the story of his magic is tied to his blood and his memories. By retracing that path, he will gain the ability to produce a new charge, one that doesn't depend on the magic of others, a charge of feelings. After that, Seridwin goes behind Will and pushes him forward as she tells him that he will use the power of his thoughts and emotions. We then see some sort of fire starting to appear right around him. Seridwin tells him that now she will pour her magical energy into the key and guide him to a certain place. When he is there, he needs to remember his origins and carve into himself the method of reviving those thoughts. After that, she starts to activate her wand and put something on Will's back. She then says, "Here the oath binds, true name of sword concealed, the uncharted bloodline traced. Here's the keyhole find, the good name of witch borrow, now to unfold the tale." She then smiles at Will and tells him to have a good time. After that, she puts the key in and tells it to unlock, calling it Wistoria Wistoria. It then looks like Will's soul almost goes out of his body, and we then see it going through all of his memories and just looking at them. After falling for a while, he suddenly wakes up, but is a lot younger. He looks around and wonders where he even is, but just then, he hears a familiar voice coming running at him. It's of course Elfie, who asks Will if he is okay. Elfie tells him to come on, and that the woods can be dangerous, so they should hold hands, and I can't. This is so wholesome. Will is just a bit surprised to see her. However, Elfie tells him that she will keep him safe, and she has a huge smile on her face. Anyway, we then cut to Julius, who comes into a room and asks Seridwin what is going on, telling her that he has been unconscious for 4 days with no sign of waking up. Seridwin looks back at Julius as she tells him that he's diving into his dreams. She explains that she used her magic to give him a catalyst, and now he's working on reviving his past. Julius is super confused as he asks her what all of that is supposed to help him get this new power. Seridwin then takes her tongue around her lips as she says that she isn't quite sure it will work, as, after all, the sword is under Finn's jurisdiction. Julius just looks at her and asks her if she is serious. She then puts her hand on Will as she explains that she has no intention of criticizing Finn's method. However, she does think that if they are going to stand against the heavens, they will need a different approach. Julius asks her what she is talking about, but Seridwin continues and says that history is buried within your body. The tracks made by wand and sword constantly intersecting trace them all the way back to his origins, and then, if possible, she hopes that someday he may reach the source of it all. And this is super interesting, but it just gives me so many more questions. For example, why does she have a picture of Will and Elfie in her home? However, we seem to leave that for now as we see Will, who thinks that his hands and feet are smaller, and not to mention Elfie's a little too. It's like he has gone back to the old days. Elfie then has a huge smile as she asks Will what's wrong. Will, however, just looks around as he wonders if this is really his past, wondering if Seridwin used her magic to send him back in time. No, scratch that, as magic is even powerful enough to turn back time. That would mean that this is a memory. However, he questions whether he is dreaming about something that happened in the past. While he is in his head, however, we do see Elfie yelling towards him a ton, but since he still isn't answering, we can see that Elfie is getting pretty mad as she looks at Will, super annoyed. After that, Elfie throws herself right at Will and screams at him to look at her. Will is super confused, but he then looks at Elfie, who is close to crying. Elfie asks him if he was thinking about another girl just now. Will, however, tells her that he wasn't. Elfie, however, continues as she tells Will that he is always spoiling Claire and the other girls at the orphanage. Will tells Elfie that he's just trying to help Father, who is the director of the orphanage. Elfie then gets even madder as she tells Will not to do that, telling him that he isn't allowed to cheat on her. Now this is actually super wholesome, but I just want to remind you guys, this is the same person who is currently one of the strongest mages ever. Anyway, we then get into Will's brain as he thinks that he came to think of it. He guesses that Elfie was even more selfish back then. Will then speaks up and asks her how he can get her to forgive him. Elfie looks right at Will as she tells him that he can do it by giving her a hug. Their eyes then meet, and both of them start to blush. After that, Will hugs Elfie tightly, and that makes her blush even more. She then tells him to pat her on the head as well, and Will then just does that, and we then see Elfie just laughing and having the biggest smile ever in the world. We then head into Will's head, as he explains that it's all so familiar. He remembers he used to do this to get her out of her bad moods. Elfie then takes Will in her hand and starts to walk away. She tells him that now that she is full of willpower, it's time to go and slay the beast. Will looks really concerned as he asks her if she just said beast. Elfie looks back at him and explains that there's supposed to be a weird beast in the forest, saying that Father doesn't like it being here, so they are going to get rid of it for him. Will continues to look worried as he tells Elfie that it isn't safe. He tells her that she can do amazing things, but that he can't even use magic. But just as he says that, he thinks that he didn't mean to say that, thinking that this is the past. So is he repeating exactly what he said back then? Elfie then tells him that it's okay, and that she brought their favorite book after all. She explains that this will give them all the courage that they need. She looks right at Will and tells him that everything's going to be fine, as Elfie will be here to protect him. Will looks at her as he thinks that it's right. The old him was a coward who was afraid of everything. Elfie was always protecting him. This made Will wonder when it was that Elfie started depending on him. Will then takes her hand, and the two of them start to run through the woods. However, we then see this insane beast-looking creature spotting them. We then head back to the two of them, and Elfie says that there's a war in a place called Regarden, and some scary people and monsters escaped and came here. Will asks her if that's true, and Elfie tells him that it is, telling him that the beast in the forest came from Regarden too, and now it's making trouble. Will then thinks that it's all coming back to him. 10 years ago, he and Elfie went into the forest behind the orphanage. Will then speaks up and asks Elfie if she can handle it. She just has a huge smile as she tells Will that she, of course, can. Will knows that he for sure remembers this conversation, but everything after that is a blur, so he wonders what exactly happened. Just then, as they are happily walking and holding hands, we see the creature coming from behind them. He attacks them with no hesitation and makes both of them fly away. They both hit the ground pretty heavily, but as they get back up, they look at it and think that it's a crystal monster. However, Will, on the other hand, thinks that it's not a monster, but that he has seen enough now to know it's a creature, a magical weapon made by mages. It's already been damaged, so it really did escape the war. The monsters then start to roar right at them. Will gets scared. Meanwhile, Elfie tells him to stay right here, and she walks towards it. Will is just still on the ground and calls out her name. Elfie then looks super determined as she tells him that she is going to take it down, explaining that she will do it with the awesome spell that she thought of. With that, she uses Ars Weiss, and we then see the first showcase of her ice clones. Elfie then gets a smug look on herself as she says that she and a bunch of other hers are going to beat it black and blue. Will on the ground can't believe it as she says that she's multicasting to Ars Weiss. Her magic control was so advanced even at this age. He always knew that Elfie was amazing after all, but even then, he wonders why he has such a bad feeling about this. We then see Elfie saying that here she goes, and she then uses Terris Nono, which sends a ton of ice crystals right at the monster. But just as they are getting closer, we cut to Will, who screams at her to run, because after that, we see that the ice crystals that were going to the monster are now out of nowhere heading right back at Elfie. We see her ice clones getting destroyed. Before we see Will, who looks over at Elfie, just then, he gets one of the ice crystals directed right at him. We then see both him and Elfie being sent back. Will tries to get up, as he says that it's a magic's reflection, and that it was what this creature was built for. Will then spots Elfie on the ground and screams at her to run. Elfie, however, tells Will that she isn't hurt, and that she isn't even scared. She continues as she says that she is going to take the monster down, and then protect Will herself, and as Will hears that, we can see him looking super destroyed. We then get into his head, as he explains that he can't move. But Elfie is about to get hurt, and it's all his fault. He tells himself to get a grip, and to move, and to run to her. After that, we see Will start to grip the grass as he thinks that he thought that the person he hated most in the world was the version of him that needed her to protect him all the time. With that, he tells himself a final time to go and do it, and after that, we can see him up on his feet as he starts to rush forward. We then cut to Elfie, who is using another of her spells right at the monster, but of course the monster just sends them right back at her. Luckily, however, we can see that before any of the attacks managed to hit Elfie, we see that Will came and blocked them all as he got on top of her. Elfie's eyes go blank as she calls out to Will before she starts to scream out of pure agony. Will then falls right on top of her, and Elfie screams at him multiple times to just wake up. However, instead, we get into Will's head as he thinks that he remembers now that he shielded Elfie and passed out. But he wonders what happened next and who it was that saved Elfie. We see that Will's eyes are starting to go blank, and it then goes blank for him. But then, in the next panel, we see some strange witch telling Will to awake. This makes Will's eyes get back in an instant, and after that, we can even see that it's some weird thing coming out of Will's body. Will himself explains that he feels so hot, he feels as if his flesh is on fire, and that his whole body is about to explode, thinking that his body is the vessel, and that it's becoming a sword. After that, we see Elfie putting her hand through Will's hair as she calls his name. However, Will is just in his brain, as he thinks that there was more to this adventure. After that, we can see that he is getting on his feet. He starts to walk away from Elfie and towards the monster. We then get a close-up of his hand as he thinks that this is the origin of the sword and the beginning of Wiss, saying that he is now fully charged, and with that, we get an ice spear right in his hand. However, we then see the monster starting to roar right at Will, but still Will looks locked in as he says, "Tiris Wiss," and seems to shoot the ice spear at the monster, and we can even see how much it shocks Elfie. But Will then thinks that it all makes sense now. He now sees why he knew back then that nothing could stop this power. He recognized it, as Elfie's magic had created it before, explaining that this is the Mage Blade, and with that, we see Will going to slash the monster. However, as he hits him, we can see that both of them manage to collide with each other. Will looks a bit worried, but just at that moment, we see Elfie, who screams out to him. After that, we can see her right by Will's side, as the two of them then look right at each other. The two of them then shake their heads at each other as they hold the weapon together, and they then, with all of their power, go to try and pierce the monster. And we then actually magically manage to see the monster being frozen solid. However, after that, both Will and Elfie fall backwards due to the force, but they manage to fall next to each other, and they hold on to one another. Elfie tells Will that he has magic, and that right now, this is his own magic. Will, however, doesn't answer, as we can see that he is beginning to once again lose consciousness. He thinks that this is his origin story, the beginning of the Mage Blade, a precious feeling that he won't forget again. He will never forget this bond that he shares with Elfie. We then see his eyes closing even more while Elfie is just smiling at him. But then, just when they are about to close fully, Elfie thanks Will, and this is so wholesome, I can't even lie. After that, we see Julius and Kiki being right on him. However, Julius screams and asks if he is finally awake. Will is super confused, but Julius then tells himself to hurry up, explaining that he has been asleep for 6 days and that the second bloom is about to start. Will just looks down at his hand. Meanwhile, Julius asks him if he is even listening. We then see Seridwin on the side, and she asks Will if he managed to access the source of the magical energy anchored inside of him. Will closes his eyes as he says that he did. Seridwin continues as she tells him that he retraced his life's path, asking if he can now revive it. Will tells her that he sure can anytime, and Seridwin just laughs at that. But she then tells him to go out there and write the new tale of the Mage Blade, and Will tells her that he sure will, and we then see him walking out with determined steps. We then cut to the ceremony, where we see Claire saying that Emma has been granted the blessing of wind, and Lyril and Gordon get to join the fire faction. We then cut to Croitz, putting up his glasses as he thinks that they may be desperate to fill their ranks, but the elemental faction's standards are far too low, explaining that these mages are children who only just got out of school, but it seems like no one cares what he thinks right now, as we then move on to Claire, who tells them that there they have it. She congratulates them and tells them that they can head to their factions. After that, she tells them that the second bloom is just about over, but before she can finish her sentence, we see Lihanna saying that Will and Julius aren't here yet. Wignall adds that they will be disqualified if the bloom ends now. But we then move towards Croitz, of course, as he says that waiting any longer would be a waste of time. He suspects that they failed to come up with an effective strategy and fled the challenge in despair. We then see Claire, who is super angry and thinks in her head that it's what the guy who deliberately tried to stop them says. Croitz then starts to look menacing as he says that those who run from the purgatory in depth of research have no right to climb the tower. Explaining that the Upper Institute will see to it that they are looked after, he then calls out to Elfie and says that he trusts that she has no objections, and we then just see a silent Elfie who is praying for them. And just then, Croitz starts to look weird, and we then quickly see why as we see both Julius and Will sprinting into the room as they apologize for being late. We then see a super annoyed Croitz. Meanwhile, both of them announce that they are here for the bloom. We see Colette's eyes light up as she sees Will, and Wignall then calls out to Julius. Meanwhile, Croitz just puts up his glasses as he calls them lowly guinea pigs, saying that giving them more trouble than they are worth. After that, we see more of those war's oozes starting to appear, and Croitz tells everyone that just like last time, they will evaluate their qualifications as a wand by means of a suitable challenge. Croitz goes further as he asks if they agree to the terms, and asks Will and the Magia Vander. From the Magia Vander, we see that it's only Cariot who says that they have no arguments here, but that all of them agree, of course. We also have Will, who tells him that he's on board. However, after that, we get into Julius's thoughts as he wonders if he is really going to be okay. He thinks that they have absolutely no idea if he actually managed to control Wiz or not. He then takes out his wand as he thinks that he will just discreetly cast a spell for him, but before he can even do that, we see a magic circle appearing under him, which leaves him stunned, but we then see that it's Elfie who did it. She looks at Julius as she tells him that she has granted him her blessing, telling him to please come this way and not to do anything else. Julius tries to argue, but Elfie just has a super huge smile as she thanks him for helping Will, but tells him that she now wants him to believe in Will. Julius is just silent as he thinks about it in his head. He goes back and forth, but he suddenly speaks up and tells Will that if he wastes all of his hard work, then he will make Will pay. Will just thanks him as he then starts to look ready. After that, he puts on his goggles and in his head tells Elfie to just wait. With that, we see the Wurzus staring him down before Claire announces that they can begin. But before we see any action, we spot Seridwin in the seating area. She explains that through her magic, the spiral path of the sword has already been opened. Will should know the steps by now, so he should show her, and also show her the new world of the sword. After that, we head towards Will, who tells himself to picture it. He thinks about the book. Then, in the next panel, we can see him holding the book together with the younger version of Elfie. Will continues to think as he tells himself to turn the page. Remember those feelings. Place the bookmark and find his spot. Read it through and carve it into your soul. Retrace that path that he walked, the story that he has lived. Revive the magic that he needs. And then, I can almost not even say it, but we then see Will being able to do it as he uses his feelings-charged Terrace Whist reloaded. And this is honestly mind-blowing, like Will really managed to do it. We can see from Croitz's look how mad he is about it. Meanwhile, Colette explains that it's a blade of light, or not even that, as she calls it, a sword made of ice magic. We once again then see Croitz, who is just even angrier now as he calls it impossible, and says that he managed to produce Whist all on his own. But after that, we see Will getting into it as he drags his sword back, before easily swinging it right at the War's ooze with no problem at all, and just that little attack makes the monster die. Sarissa explains that it is so strong. Guilford adds on that, though it may not be as strong as an externally charged Whis. Last, we have Cariot, who says that even so, its destructive force is at least as great, if not greater than a mid-level spell, explaining that it sure is a surprise. Anyway, Will isn't done, and far from it. It seems like he tells himself to put his feelings into the blade, and to use them to power the sword, and with that, we see him killing yet another one of those monsters. We then see Elfie, who gets big eyes as she watches this and says his name, not to mention that we have Zio, who slams his hand down and explains that this is what he is talking about. We obviously can't forget about Seridwin, who tells Will that he gets full marks and not only that, but also a gold star. Just then, someone comes walking behind her. The mysterious person tells her that they choose not to intervene out of respect for her willingness to advance him to the tower, saying that it looks like it worked out. We then see that it's the goat Finn, but that's not even the craziest part, as he then asks if he should call her Mistress Cauldron. Seridwin looks back at Finn and asks him to please stick to her real name when she is in this form. It's exhausting having to cast aging magic on herself after all, and on top of that, she believes that the tower is off limits to non-mages. Finn just starts to laugh as he tells her that it's a little late for that. Seridwin then looks at Finn and tells him that anyway, it's not like he was pulling the strings by himself, explaining that he was the one who gave the dwarves that rare Whist gem. Finn just explains that he is a new wielder of the fifth element. Surely she can look the other way over such a minuscule gift. Finn then has a bright smile as he explains that he's still growing as a vessel. His magic amplification abilities aren't developed enough for him to reload on his own, but with help from that Whist set Silver, he can handle it just fine. Finn doesn't just stop there, however, as he says that his hair is going white, losing his memories. Will was too immature before the cost of using Wiz was significant. Now that he's grown from his 6 years at the academy, Finn can finally teach him some things. With that, we see Will cutting down the last of the monsters, and Finn, in his head, wonders if Will can be the one to show them the unknown that Seridwin wants to find. Anyway, after that, we go back to Croitz, who screams out that it's impossible, and he looks absolutely furious. Meanwhile, we can then see Charles behind him, who is just a bit confused and concerned for him. We then see the Earth faction saying that the creatures are gone. The Dark faction also joins in and says that the output, if he were that much like a dwarf, then he could never generate that much power. However, just after that, we see legit Elfie and Colette, as well as Lihana, all looking at Will with big eyes, as they can't seem to believe it, and all of them start to blush. We then head back to Will, who looks at his sword and explains that it has now gone back to normal. He thinks that when he charges it himself, the magic gets used up that much faster, saying that he will have to use it sparingly. But of course, it couldn't be over here as Croitz screams out, telling them not yet. He says that he can't accept this, his ilk can't use magic, and that he refuses to believe it. We then see Claire, who just tells him to come on and that he really is just nitpicking now. Croitz, however, explains that he isn't. He says that if he cannot explain the mystery behind his powers, how can he call himself a mage? And how do they know that his sword isn't actually a magic item? The use of equipment other than one's blade in the bloom is strict. They must investigate Will to ensure that he is in full compliance with the rules. We then see that some of the factions seem to actually agree with this. After that, we see Julius, who says that after all this, they are still arguing. Sarissa just explains that it only shows how much of an outline Will is. Not even the faction leaders can make up their minds on how to deal with him. But we then see Elfie, who looks extremely pissed off and ready to burst at any moment. We then head into Sarissa's head, as she thinks that the only ones who can settle this matter are the Magia Vander, the tower's top of the top. But it can't be Elfie. Will is practically family to her. Everyone is sure to assume that she is playing favorites. However, Sarissa does admit that Elfie is almost at her breaking point, wondering if there is not some way to get another Magia Vander on their side. Just then, however, we see Zio, who steps out of his chair and calls this stupid. He explains that if they want to see what this kid can do, there's one simple way to do it. He calls out to Will and tells him one hit. Will is super confused as to what he means by that, but Zio tells him that he needs to show them that he can survive one hit. Do that, and he will gladly give him his seal of approval. We then see that Zio has created a whole lightning bolt ability right at his hands. Will looks at this and thinks that it's an extra short incantation, thinking that it's a low-level spell. However, Elfie tells Will to run, because right after that, we see Zio sending it away, and it's far from a low-level spell, as it's a crazy spell that goes right at Will. Will looks super shocked. He knows that defense is impossible and evasion is also impossible, which means that he is pretty much doomed. But he does have a slight chance as to surviving a fatal blow, and then he knows what he has to do. However, before he can finish his sentence, we see a huge explosion happening right by Will, as the attack has already reached him. We see Elfie, who screams his name with all that she possibly can. We also see his friends, and all of them look super shocked and confused. But don't you worry, as when the smoke clears, we can see within it. We then see Zio smiling. While Elfie obviously looks really worried, but when the smoke is fully gone, we see Will explaining that he is fully charged and he has Zio's Zalja Whis attack totally absorbed, and this is just pure cinema. We see some other mages asking what is going on and just what it was that Will did, but we then have Finn, who just laughs as he says that he ate the magic. Saying that he charged the thunderbolt as soon as it hit and halved the power, Seridwin says that of course, Will couldn't absorb the entire spell, so he did get burned by Zio's humongous lightning attack. But he still survived what was a fatal blow that he couldn't fend off or evade. Anyway, we then head to Zio, who can't seem to help himself but just hysterically laughs. He looks right at Will and tells him that he did it, saying that he survived an attack from Zio himself. Zio asks them if they all didn't see this. Will took an attack from a Magia Vander, and he's still standing, asking them what more proof they need. He tells Will he sees that he has his approval and that he doesn't belong on the bottom. He has the biggest smile ever as he tells Will to come up to the top, but just then we get to Croitz once again, who screams and tells Zio no. He tells Zio that the Bloom ceremony is a solemn tradition to determine who deserves to join a faction. This is not the way to proceed. However, before he has finished speaking, we see Zio right by him as he uses his lightning to basically teleport to him. Zio then looks at him and tells him, "Alright," telling Croitz then that that means that he can also survive his attack, telling him that there's no way that Will can do something that Croitz himself can't. Zio tells him that if he screws this up, then he will end up a certified nobody, asking if he has got that. This scares Croitz to death as he says that he acknowledges Will's right to ascend the tower. After that, we see all of his friends smiling and finally breathing out, as we now can comfortably say that Will can now join a faction. We then see Elfie running with all that she can. Sarissa calls out to her, but it doesn't help, as Elfie wastes not a second at all as she jumps right into Will's arms. Will himself is pretty surprised by that as he just says her name. We then see Elfie crying uncontrollably as she thanks God that Will managed to do it. We then see Claire and Sarissa both looking at this. Meanwhile, Colette looks a tiny bit jealous. Anyway, back to the main pair, as Elfie apologizes for not being able to do anything to help. Will just tells her not to be sorry, but instead, be happy. Elfie is confused, but Will tells her that she has waited here for so long, and now he has finally made it, and he has a bright smile on his face. We then get to Claire, who says that she is almost sure that she doesn't have to ask, but she still asks Will about which faction he will be joining. Will is about to say that he is going to join Elfie's faction. However, not long before, someone grabs him. We see that it's Zio, who straight up tells him that he is wrong, and that he is coming with him, and we can then see that Elfie is about to snap. She starts to emanate some insane power, as she asks Zio to just read the room, asking if he is a pea-brained, witless, man-stealing thief, telling him that she is going to freeze him to death. Will then screams at Elfie to calm down. After that, he asks Zio to please let him go, explaining that he appreciates the sentiment, but that he is planning on going with Elfie. However, he actually gets cut off in his sentence as we see Zio, who just uses his lightning to completely fry him, and he screams out. In the next panel, we see him completely out of it as Elfie screams out his name. Zio then holds him in his head and asks him what he said, asking if Will said that he wanted to join the Thunder Fraction and that it settled then. However, obviously, that isn't going to work, as Elfie goes to him and tells him that she has had enough of his antics, screaming at Zio to give him back. We then cut to Colette, who asks what is going on down there. Rose scratches her face and tells her that it looks like Will's being headhunted. But with that, Colette then lights up, as she says that if that's the case, then maybe the Earth fraction should get in on it too, telling Rose that she saw how powerful Will is, explaining that having him would be good for the fraction. Saying that she promises that it's not because she wants to be closer to him in the tower, Rose just tells her to calm down, but still, it's cute. We then get back, and Elfie asks Zio why he is doing this, asking him if he really wanted to. Then he should have scouted him at the beginning. Zio, while still holding onto Will's head, tells Elfie that he didn't want him then, but now he does, telling her that it's as simple as that. But we can see Elfie getting more frustrated. Zio then continues as he tells her not to put chains on desire. Just one of the little maxims he lives by. Riches, drink, woman, man, whatever he wants, he takes it, and that's what he does. We then see almost everyone collectively calling him a savage, but we then see the Thunder faction adjutant, Guilford, who just says that he is a paragon of logic and reason, calls him a great mage. We then see Elfie, who apologizes to the great mage of logic, but tells him that she doesn't intend to let anyone take Will away from her. She then gets to him and screams at Zio that she will annihilate anyone who tries. Zio just looks at her with a smug expression and starts to laugh before telling her that she talks a tough game, and that she should come on, she and he, looking right at her as he says that the winner gets Will and asks if that sounds good. Elfie, in an instant, tells him that it sounds perfect. But just then, Claire interrupts as she says that she isn't letting two Magia Vander duke it out over a boy, telling them to knock it off. However, we then see Cariot, who asks her why even try to stop these hotheads. Any intervention on their part would only drag out this already protracted charade, and Eleanor adds on by telling Claire to let the sloth and the savage kill each other. Their absence would only do them good, and we just see Claire asking them to come on now. After that, we see that Elfie has Will in her arms and gives him to Sarissa while telling her to take care of him, and Sarissa is just super lost and silent. After that, she jumps back down and stands against Zio. Someone asks if they are being serious, and someone else says that the two top mages in their world are really going to fight over a boy. We then see Finn, who just loves it, asking what they can do, and that the Magia Vander are free to act however they want. Elfie then genuinely looks super ready as she asks what the signal to start is, but Zio tells her that they don't need one and that they have already begun. After that, we then see Julius by Will as he screams at him to wake up and open his eyes. But suddenly Julius's eyes start to go blank as he can feel an insane amount of attack power behind him. After that, we see that it's Elfie who is starting it off. She says El Glace Froce, El Seven Flores El Caldena, and this spell is honestly insane. Man, this is why I love this manga so much, because the art is like nothing I have ever seen before. Anyway, Colette says that here they go, and Wignall explains that Elfie is casting the big spells right out the gate, but just then, Zio appears right behind Elfie as he tells her that he missed her. Elfie tries to look behind her and tries to get a defense ready, but it's too late as he uses Thunder Howl, and that sends a huge lightning beam right at her. Julius screams out to her for some bizarre reason like, "Bro, back off." Anyway, Zio then starts to look excited as he sees a ton of Elfie clones standing right around. Julius says that it's Weiss clones and asks when she did it. Sarissa, on his side, tells Julius that she summoned them after blocking his view with her Cathedral of Ice. In truth, all she needed was a split second, as Elfie is the fastest caster in the tower. She then puts her glasses up and explains that she isn't just known for her speed, but also her ruthlessness toward her enemies, as we then see all of the clones starting to point their fingers at Zio. After that, some magic circles start to appear all around them, and Elfie tells Zio that Will is her. She then uses Almenta Oliscus and sends a ton of ice beams right at Zio, and trust me when I say a ton, as this is like nothing I have ever seen. Sion, on the side, explains that she just cast a high-grade ice barrage with no incantation, which would normally take an entire chant to cast. He took everything he had to cast that spell down on the 11th floor, and all she did was speak it into existence. He then started to grind his teeth together as he questioned just how she could be so powerful. But still, that's not even all, as she also uses her Revil Colentibium Stellus Natia attacks right at Zio, who is somewhere buried in the smoke. We then see Cariot, who says that it's a bombardment of crystalline ice on top of the clones she's already summoned. Elfie's pulling out all the stops today. We then see Logwell, who tells him that her icicles are not just powerful, they are also swift and accurate in long-range battle. The Ice Maiden has the upper hand. Lastly, we of course see Finn with the brightest smile ever as he tells them not to forget that there's another beast in the cage with her. We then see Zio stepping out completely unharmed as he asks her if that's all. Elfie then right away looks at him while looking a bit shocked from the looks of it, but suddenly, somehow, he goes right behind Elfie in, like, no joke, an instant. He then completely grabs her head and uses something called Vulcan Flote. This sends a lightning beam strike all throughout all of her clones, so the one he grabbed must also have been a clone. We can then see him flying as he calls out to Elfie. He asks her what's the matter, asking her if this is really all that she's got, telling her that she has no clones left to take shots for her now, and then he goes to Elfie. He grabs her wand and then uses Zalgia Saga and completely sends a killer punch. Luckily, it's just ice that breaks, as it was a clone as well. We then see Elfie high up in the sky, just smiling down. We also see Seridwin, and she says that every exchange up until now has been a ploy to give her time to escape from him and prepare a final assault. We then see Eleanor, who explains that she cast hide on herself to circumvent any spells. Zio then starts to look right up at her. Meanwhile, Elfie just points at him and asks him how it's going down there, asking if he is having fun playing with her toys. After that, we see a huge magic circle under Elfie, as she then uses Clone Chain Full Connect. Zio gets a weird smile as he then tells her, "Well played," before we then see the entire area being completely filled with ice boulders and water, it seems like. We see a mage telling everyone to deploy barriers. After that, we see Colette, who seems to be pretty shocked by a chain circle, and Rose explains that she leveraged her clones to amplify the potency of a stronger spell, saying that she doubts even a Magia Vander could have survived that. However, we obviously then see Zio looking completely unharmed as he tells her, not really, and that fooling around with dolls just doesn't cut it for him. We then see Elfie staring right at him with dead-looking eyes. Meanwhile, Zio's himself. He spins around his spear before launching it right at Elfie and telling her that he wants to play with the real thing. Luckily, Elfie manages to dodge the spear, but then we can see that Zio has just somehow then appeared right on it, as he tells Elfie that he is behind her. After that, he starts to load up a punch as he tells Elfie that down she goes, and this actually seems to hit this time. As Elfie goes flying down to the ground, we do however see her taking her wand at the ground to most likely minimize the damage, but still, we can see her being hurt as she falls down. After that, she doesn't even get a second to breathe as Zio is right behind her, and then once again gets in a massive punch right at her, this time really hurting Elfie as we see her spitting out blood. The force is even so hard that she goes completely through her cathedral. Sarissa then screams out for her. Meanwhile, Zio starts to get out some lightning bolts before telling her that Will is his. We then see Colette, who says that she doesn't understand. All of his attacks until now has been close range. He's not fighting like a mage at all, asking if he is a knight enchanter like Lihana. However, Lihana tells her that she is wrong, and that from what she can see, all he's doing is releasing magic energy. We then see Guilford coming very creepily up behind Lihana, as he tells her that it is very astute, telling Lihana to watch closely, as this is the pinnacle what they in the Thunder faction live by. Great Mage Zio doesn't rely on complicated magic, he merely lets the energy from him, leaving everything else behind to him. It's nothing more than a form of movement, continuing and saying that it's a technique that inspires dread in all who witness it, calling it Wrath Bolt. After that, we see Logwell, who says that Zio's Wrath Bolt may be the only thing that outpaces Elfie's cast speed. We even see Croitz, who looks scared and says that he is endowed with a power that defies logic. It is absolutely monstrous. Zio's immeasurable might is the bane of his existence. Lastly, we have Scion, who also looks to be in shock, as he explains that Zio is showing them exactly why he's a Magia Vander, and how he earned the title of Wand of Thunder, which, to be fair, is super cool. Anyway, we then see the fight going on pretty intensely, but while they are fighting to the death, we hear Seridwin asking Finn who he thinks will emerge victorious. Finn looks confidently as he says that he believes in Zio. He goes deeper into it as he explains that Elfie created 12 spells on her own. There's no denying she's a whiz at spell work, but Zio is the king of praxis. He's second only to Aaron in dungeon progression, having made it 48 floors down himself. His mastery at applying magic is irrefutable. He'd say he's a man who is as much of a sword as he is a wand, and on top of that, if he is being honest, then Will would be better served under the direction of Zio than Elfie. After that, we move over to Cariot, who is sitting comfortably in his chair as he explains that if this were a long-range clash, then Elfie might have a chance, but as long as Zio keeps things close, he will dominate her. He then has a creepy smile as he explains that he thinks that they have a victor. However, after that, we move to Eleanor, who looks super down. We then see Philvis calling out to Lefia. He tells her that Eleanor seems to be disconsolate and asks her why she thinks that. Lefia tells him that it's simple, continuing as she says that she once lost to Elfie in a contest of ice magic. As much as she'd hate to see Elfie win, she doesn't want her to lose either. In a few words, she's stuck between a glacier and a hard place. After that, we then, funnily enough, see Eleanor, who screams out and asks them who said that the two of them could talk. We then head back into the battle, where we see that Zio got in a massive blow and sent Elfie right into the seating area, and she has a ton of blood going down her face. Sarissa calls out to her. Meanwhile, Julius starts to grab Will's shirt. He screams at him to wake up, asking Will if he is just going to lie here while Elfie loses to that madman. He starts to shake Will upside down and tells him that Will is the only one who can give her the push she needs to pull through. After that, we actually start to hear a couple of mumbles coming out from Will before he says, Elfie, with a weak tone. Anyway, we then move back to Elfie, and we can see the goggles she gave to Will are on top of an ice shard. After that, Zio starts to go to her and asks her if she is all out of tricks now. Zio then starts to look pretty manic, as he tells her that he then guesses that it's time for him to take his prize. He then points his finger right, and is about to load up a beam right at Elfie. However, to our surprise, it seems that there's a beam going to Zio instead. It goes right past him and brushes his face, even making him start to bleed a bit. We even see a lot of shocked faces before Seridwin has a smug expression as she says that it looks to her like Elfie still is running, continuing and saying that Elfie is just as tenacious as Will, and this panel is just crazy, like I am honestly really speechless. Elfie then speaks up. She tells Zio that he isn't taking anything. She screams at him that Will is not his to take. Zio screams back as he tells her that the ice witch lives, saying that she's even feistier than ever. He then admits that he has never seen her so riled up before, asking her what it is that has motivated this stunning transformation of hers, explaining that he needs to know. Elfie then holds on to Will's goggles as she screams that this is love, and I think that Elfie might be my all-time favorite character now. Anyway, Zio is super confused by this, but Elfie then closes her eyes as she squeezes the goggles. After that, she explains that Will has risked his life to protect her. He's put in the work to make it here to be with her. He's kept his promise, and now it's her turn. She looks extremely fired up as she screams that her love for him will see her victorious over anyone who stands in her way. Zio just laughs as he finally realizes that this is it and that Elfie desires him. Sadly, we then move to Colette, who we can see grips the bridge thing extremely hard because of this, and Rose just looks at her. Anyway, back to the fight, where Zio tells her that she is a fool, but still, he asks her to show him just what her love can do. We then see Finn, who explains that Zio's Wrath Bolt technique is nothing if not swift. The lightning flows through his body, boosting his movement and reaction speed, enabling him to unleash a mighty and rapid assault no mage could counter. However, the question is, what good are the boons of Wrath Bolt if you can't even move? As we then see, Elfie has used her El Glace Frosse El10, Mildas Freuderite. Zio even then has a smile on his face as he asks what this is. Elfie tells him that this is a barrier spell, and a painfully infuriating one to cast at that. She explains that it requires she expend half of her magical energy within a certain range to manifest, meaning she has to cast plenty of spells just to set it up, asking if it isn't truly inconvenient. We then see Wignall thinking that the barrage of high-grade spells was just for this barrier. Lihanna thinks that she set up this trap, knowing Zio would fight her into a corner. We then cut to Eleanor, who explains that she pulled the same trick on her. It's her secret weapon. The closer you get to her, the more frozen you become. The savage's speed has become his own worst enemy. We then cut back to Elfie, who explains that she initially created this spell because Will was too shy to sit still and let her hug him, which is so cute. But she continues and says that instead, she used it on him, and now he is stuck, but not for long, as it will be over soon. We then see Zio calling her a nasty witch, but Elfie just tells him that he is free to call her whatever he wants, but that Will is hers. She then starts to load up a punch of her own, as she looks super determined and explains that she will protect Will, just as if he were her bride. And it's official. Elfie is the best character in all of fiction. Anyway, she then manages to send Zio legit flying with her punch. Guilford can't even believe it, and Julius starts to shake Will upside down as he says that Elfie did it, telling him to open his eyes and that she really did it. We then see that he will open his eyes a bit as he just says Elfie's name. But not long after, we see Zio punching his way out of it, and we see Elfie looking extremely annoyed as she can hear laughter coming. We then see Zio, who is super damaged, but he says that the usurper approaches. After that, he starts to just look more insane as he says, "Light of innocence, thine eyes pure, look upon the promised summit of glory, and witness as thy greatness is upended by the viper." We then see Cariot, who thinks that it's an incantation, and that Zio is through with playing games. We then see Eleanor being super pissed off, as she also thinks that it would take an unfathomable amount of magic to break through Elfie's barrier, and it seems that Zio's stupid enough to try. We then see her just calling him a reckless savage. She then calls for both Lefia and Fivlis, and then in the next panel, they are just gone, which was pretty cool. We then head to Colette, who questions herself about what this even is, and that she has never seen anything like it. Cian also looks really scared as he explains that Zio is casting a supreme grade spell. However, Elfie isn't backing down as she seems to be doing the same thing as she says, "White ice arise, wild vortex of chaos, torn shield of protection, remnants of war, as paradise dies, may silver white come to shroud it. As wintry winds blow, may witches mourn the heroes lost." With that, we then move back to Zio, who still isn't done yet. By the way, I'm not sure if you guys find it annoying with me reading these incantation lines, but hopefully it's fine. Anyway, Zio says, "Thrust thine unfair punishment unto the falsely accused. Cast the brand of sin into a sea of blood. May the prominent tumble, see praise turn to hate, and put love to sleep. May reason shatter, see lamentation, the mask of Minos." We then see Lefia and Fivlis again, and they together explain that attacking, moving and casting all at the same time, a textbook example of harmonic casting, an elfin technique, the savage is not above theft, and that he's made quite clear. We then go back to the goat Elfie, who's still doing her incantation as she says, "People perish, invaders depart, then nothingness." In her frozen castle, alone, the witch stands, tears onto graves, prayers to ashes, and oaths to the beyond. The throne of solitude now declares itself a protector. After that, we see a really shocked Julius as he says that it's a channeled incantation. Thinking that one after the other, the clones carry the spell on for her. What he tried to do up against the Grand Duke was nothing compared to the real thing. We then see Will behind him, who has finally woken up and asks if Elfie is fighting. Zio starts to smile right at Elfie as he says, "Deception cuts through to truth, trample over all obstacles, cut down the naysayers, seize the power you know is thine own, and upon the viper, celebrate the splendor of despair." Elfie then looks at him with a cool facial expression, as she herself says, "With wings of frost and a keeper's beak, wielding an ivory truth, the ruler of the icy skies severs the chain of sorrow." We then see a whole aura starting to spawn around both of them, and Zio says with a derisive sneer, "The mighty demon sings," countered by Elfie, who says with a solemn visage, "The wise sage hums." After that, both of them look more than ready as they together scream an eternal hymn for the ephemeral flora that deceiveth the world. They then take out their hands and start to call back their wands, which was super sick. Zio then directs it at Elfie as he says, "Eradicate the kingdom of bellowing thunder and deliver demise unto the foolish." Meanwhile, Elfie also directs her wand at Zio as she says, "Come forth, world of silver, and deliver peace unto the sky." We then, however, see Will screaming out and telling Elfie to wait up. However, it's far too late, as Zio has already summoned his Vilgus Argo Thorzeus, and Elfie has summoned her Glacia Last Albus. And guys, come on now, what even is this? Like, this is the greatest masterpiece I have ever seen in my life. Anyway, with that, we see the two creatures starting to close the distance and go right at each other. We also see both Lefia and Fivlis saying, "Dio's Grail," which looks like it creates some sort of barrier around them. As just after that, the two creatures collide, and now I know I have said it already, but this is peak fiction. The force from their battle is so great that even the normal citizens can feel it, as we see Werkner, who says that explosions are coming from inside the tower, only they have the power to produce such sounds. Edward adds on that it's those blasted beasts, and they both know that it has to be the Magia Vander. We then head back to the fight, and we now see that almost the entire battle area is completely destroyed. We see a couple of mages even wondering if they are alive, and that they were sure that they were gone. We then, however, get to Will, who gets up in an instant as he screams out Elfie's name. After that, we see both Zio and Elfie right by the broken wall and lying down in a mess, with them both having a ton of blood on them. Zio even then has a smile as he says that it looks like they each got in a good hot one, telling her that he didn't think she had it in her. Elfie just tells him that she was just about to say the same to him. We then see Zio starting to get up again as he tells Elfie that the last spell took everything he had, but they still have a fight to finish, right? Elfie tells him that he is spot on, and after that, we see both of them once again rushing at each other. However, just when they are about to collide, we see Cariot stopping Zio and Eleanor stopping Elfie. Both of them explain that the time's up. Elfie, however, is mad as she tells Eleanor to get out of the way. Eleanor tells her that, as much as she supports them destroying each other, she is afraid they have run out of time. Zio then tells Cariot to get lost, but he just tells him that they stood by and let the two of them make a spectacle of themselves, yet neither of them emerged victorious, calling it embarrassing. But now that the king has arrived, perhaps he can weigh in on their predicament. With that, we see Aaron coming down, and he screams at them that it's enough. He explains that he will not tolerate any further friction between the Magia Vander. Zio right away screams at him to stay out of this and calls him an ancient white beard. Elfie joins in as she tells him that his peacemaking is useless, saying that she will not back down until the issue of Will's placement is settled. Zio also says that he doesn't see any way of solving this that doesn't involve him taking her down. After that, both of them get mad at each other as they stare intensely at each other. Aaron just looks at them before he tells them rock, paper, scissors, and with that, we can see everyone being completely dumbfounded. Anyway, Aaron tells them to attempt to resolve this with another method, and Will falls under his placement, asking if they understand. He then tells them to go on, and that he is watching right here. With that, the two of them don't hesitate as they go right into it and say that they will defeat the other fair and square. While the two of them are off doing rock, paper, scissors, we see Will ask Julius if he minds explaining to him what is going on. Julius just wonders where he should even start, but says that it is Will's fault at the very least. The time then goes, and we see that for 299 rounds they have made ties. But then for the 300th time, we can see that Zio manages to win with rock, and this makes Elfie scream out with all that she can. Zio tells her to eat it. Meanwhile, Elfie is crying uncontrollably on the floor. Zio then grabs onto Will as he says that to the victor go the spoils, like it or not, but Will is coming with him. Will is just super confused at this point, but we then see Elfie, who has gotten up and starts to hold on to Will, saying that she won't let him take Will, as Will is only hers. Will looks at Elfie, who is crying more and more. He thinks that he has almost forgotten that he isn't the only one who was alone. Elfie climbed her way up the tower all by herself. She's been waiting for 6 long years. He knows that he can't make her wait any longer, and that he wants to be with her, but after that, he speaks up. As he puts his arms on her shoulders, he tells her that it's all right, telling her that they will meet again, and that he will make sure of it. At this point, Elfie can almost not even say her name as she just starts to cry even more. But just then, Sarissa grabs a hold of Elfie and tells her that they have to go. Elfie looks crushed, but Will just smiles right at her. Sarissa tells Elfie to please not embarrass herself any further in front of the entire tower's Grand Mage. However, Elfie is just talking against her the whole way, but when she has finally been dragged out, we can see Will clearly be super sad as he starts to almost cry. After that, Zio speaks up and talks to Will. He asks him if he is coming quietly, saying that he thought that he would have to drag Will to his side, kicking and screaming. Will then closes his eyes while telling Zio that if he made any objection, Elfie would come right back out swinging and hurt herself in the process. After having said that, he turns around in an instant and asks Zio to please not fight with Elfie anymore. Will continues and says that if that's a commitment that he doesn't think that he can keep, then he will take him down here and now, and then join Elfie. Zio can't help himself but starts to laugh a ton as he tells Will that he has got nerve and that he sure likes that. He then places his hand on Will's head as he tells him that from this day forth, he belongs to the Thunder faction, and we can see that his whole robe then changes into a full black one. Zio then turns around and tells Will to grit his lions because they are in for a rude awakening. Will looks more fired up than I have ever seen him as he then tells Zio that he is on board with it. After that, we get to the tower, the first stratum interim room. There, we see Julius telling Will that it's ridiculous, saying that after all that crying about Grand Mage Elfie, he can't believe that he didn't even join the Ice faction. Will is just silent, but Julius then hands him his goggles. He then starts to go off at Will as he asks him if he understands how much trouble he caused him by going to the Thunder faction, explaining that when he tried to get Elfie to stop crying, she left in a tizzy screaming about how she wanted to quit everything. It took the entire faction to keep her from leaving. That's all the crap he has had to deal with. Will is just unsure what to say, but he apologizes, and he does thank Julius for getting his goggles back. Will then looks over at Lihanna and asks if something is wrong, and tells her that she looks exhausted. Lihanna somewhat whispers to him as she tells Will that he is part of the Thunder faction now, and that she will soon find out why. We then move to Colette, who asks if anyone knows what the deal is with this guidance session. Rose says that it seems like all of the new mages who've made it into the tower have been called to attend. Sion says that he is sure that it's just an assembly going over the rules of the tower. Wignall adds on that it would make sense. Life in the tower is bound to be different from the academy after all. Just then, we see Claire coming out. She takes out some sort of party things and sprays them towards the classroom. She then congratulates all of them on their faction placements and that not a single mage was left behind. After that, she does admit that she would expect nothing less from the generation of disquiet. Even the straggles from the first bloom managed to receive blessings. Let her be the first to offer them a hearty well done. She continues and says that within all of them lies endless potential. Now the guidance session is an assembly they hold every year to explain the ins and outs and do's and don'ts of the tower to new mages. But we then get a close-up on Claire as she tells them that this year is different. Instead of giving them guidance, she will be assigning all of them a highly confidential order. We see Will being super confused, but Claire continues as she says that each of them will be tasked with investigating their factions thoroughly. She tells them to pay close attention to the conversations, actions, and records of their faction and faction mates. Should they find anything suspicious, investigate and report it. Julius then pops up instantly as he asks her what kind of order is she talking about here. Claire tells him that the tower has been looking into the details behind the attack on Terminelia, and they found evidence that could only belong to a mage of the tower. With that, she ends it with a boom, as she explains that there's a traitor among them, which is completely and utterly insane. Now here is where I personally feel like Season 2 would end. There isn't a set chapter yet, so this is all speculation, but to me, I feel like it makes perfect sense. Anyway, thank you for sticking around with me for 3 hours, and hopefully I will see you around this channel more in the future. Anyway, have a fantastic day.